Chapter 126, Ready Set Action, 4. While Harry had asked her not to attack them on her own, he never told her that she couldn't kill anyone if they decided to attack her. Jacqueline had long realized that Harry was basically keeping her away from the action. She could understand why he was doing that. She knew that it wasn't because he didn't believe in her skills, he was doing this because he cared about her. While Jacqueline would admit, it was really sweet, but to be honest, it was getting on her nerves. Where the foo *k did she go? Jacqueline heard one of the grunts following her whisper furiously. Foo *ked if I know. The other grunt scoffed in dismissal. She could have disapparated, he suggested after a few moments of silence, making the first grunt scowl unhappily. Boss is not going to be happy, the first grunt muttered while looking around frantically. While the grunts were busy looking around, Jacqueline was watching the two of them from the roof of the building. The two of them were standing by. I know that. Foo *k. Let's check around that corner before we leave, the second grunt suggested, and the first grunt simply grunted in consent as there was nothing else they could do. Now that Jacqueline knew that there were two people following her, she had three options to choose from. She could either leave, which was out of the question. She could sneak around and murder them with none the wiser, or she could confront them and beat them into the ground before killing them. Her choice was kind of obvious. So, she simply jumped down from the room and silently cast Arresto Momentum on herself before her feet touched the ground. Even though her landing was safe, it wasn't silent, which was obviously noticed by the two grunts, not that Jacqueline cared, especially with her desired choice. The two grunts quickly turned around only to find the woman they were looking for standing by the wall with a lazy look on her face. Hey losers! Looking for me? Jacqueline asked mockingly, trying to rile them up, but the grunts weren't even listening to her as Jacqueline had to duck down to dodge a blasting curse. She immediately realized her mistake. These two might be grunts, but they were experienced grunts. They didn't even bother to waste their time by bantering with her, they simply decided to kill her and get this over with. While Jacqueline knew that she had made a mistake, it wasn't anything serious. The blasting curse sailed over her head, but she paid it no mind as she was already casting spells at the duo. With a quick jab of her wand, she cast a cutting curse at one of the grunts while the other grunt attacked her with a flame whip. Jacqueline grinned and a green-colored astral shield appeared in her other hand, which she used to parry the flame whip masterfully. The grunt who barely defended himself from Jacqueline's cutting curse never saw the flame whip coming towards him. The flame whip landed on his chest, making the man scream as he fell to the ground while screaming bloody murder. You bitch! The one who had cast the flame whip at her snarled in fury. Ah! So, you can talk! Jacqueline exclaimed in mock surprise as she cast a bone breaker at him before she stepped aside to dodge a cutting curse. Goodbye, my brief enemy! Jacqueline grinned at him cheekily before casting 3 spells at him in rapid succession. The man was able to defend himself against the first 2 spells, but the third spell hit him on the chest, blasting him back a few meters away from the spot he was standing. Jacqueline decided to ignore that grunt as her spell had concaved his chest, but the grunt who was hit with the flame whip was still on the ground, groaning in pain. She walked up to him, but decided to keep some distance from him. The man noticed her arrival and turned his head to glare at her. Why you don't know who you are messing with? The man wheezed with some difficulties and Jacqueline was certain that one of his lungs was punctured. Oh! I assure you, I know who I am messing with, but you guys have no idea who you have messed with. Your boss should have accepted the olive branch. Ah, well. There is no medicine for regrets. Jacqueline shrugged with a what can you do look on her face before casting a cutting curse to behead the man. Jacqueline turned around to leave, but she stopped and decided to leave a message for the guild. Regards from Lost Garden. Jacqueline inscribed the message on the forehead of the man she just beheaded. Nodding her head in satisfaction, she dropped the head beside the body before opening a portal in front of her. She stepped through the circle and arrived on the roof of one of the buildings at some distance from the guild building. She knew what she had done. She had just killed 2 people, but instead of feeling guilty or anything, she was feeling ecstatic. She decided to explore her feelings later as she needed to inform Harry about the development. She placed the tip of her wand over her mark so that she could send Harry the message. They denied. As expected, Harry answered after a few seconds. Tried to silence me. After she sent the second message, there was an uncomfortable stretch of silence. Are you safe? Harry asked after some time. Yes, killed them. Good, return for now. Harry's reply was immediate and Jacqueline simply decided to accept his order and return for the time being. Austrian Alps, Austria. Is she all right? Lily asked with a hint of concern in her voice. She will never admit it, but she had started caring for Jacqueline and Brittany, and she also knew that Harry would be hurt if something happened to either of them. Yes, she killed them. I told her to leave, Harry answered stiffly. He didn't have any problems with killing as he had the time to come to terms with that side of him, but Jacqueline had just killed, so he was feeling slightly worried about her. That's good. So, we are declaring war on guilt, right? Lily asked excitedly. Yes, I offered them an olive branch, but instead of accepting they chose death and destruction, Harry stated firmly. The guild was going to regret their decision, but there was something else he needed to do before that. We are here, Mom, Harry declared as the Nurmengard castle finally came into his view. Whoa, Lily was quite surprised by the sight. Grindelwald built this place on his own, Harry declared, and he had to admit, he was impressed by the place. The man had built the castle on his own and it was quite an impressive feat. Of course, Harry was sure that Harry could do the same, but that didn't mean that he couldn't appreciate the hard work of another person. This place is massive. How the hell did he build this place on his own? Lily questioned in bewilderment. Just goes to tell everyone how powerful he really was, even if he had the Elder Wand in his possession, Harry praised the man. True, the man was defeated, but he was ready to fight and die for the cause he believed in. Now, how do I do this? Harry rubbed his chin with a thoughtful look on his face. Right now, he was close enough to notice the guards milling around castle. He could either sneak inside or he could go in guns blazing, but after some consideration, he decided to go with the former option. He was sure that he could butcher his way through, but that would bring too much attention to him. Harry quickly landed on one of the hills and tucked away his broom in the snow. The place was cold as Fu*K, but thankfully, Harry was a wizard, so heating and warming charms to the rescue. When he was feeling warm enough, he opened a portal and stepped through, arriving inside the castle. After casting a disillusionment charm on himself, Harry started to look for a guard patrol, and it wasn't that hard for him to find a couple of guards on the round. He quickly morphed into one of the guards and cast Imperious Curse on both of them. He knocked out the guard whose looks he decided to borrow and shoved him inside one of the storage lockers, but not before nicking some blood from the said guard to get past the wards inside the castle. After that, he dropped the disillusionment charm and without wasting any more time, he ordered the guard under his control to lead him toward Grindelwald's cell. Harry crossed the wards without any problems as the wards recognized him as the man he was posing to be. The two of them came across quite a few more guard patrols, but none of them said anything besides casual greetings. Harry had to admit, Nymphadора's metamorphomagus abilities were quite overpowered. Harry finally arrived in front of Grindelwald's cell and started to cast various types of notice-me-not charms without his wand, as casting magic with a wand could trigger the alarms. When he was finally satisfied with the measures, he knocked out the guard who was with him before he started to unlock the cell with his magic. Unfortunately for Harry, he was severely underestimating the security in Nurmengard Castle. As soon as the door was unlocked, the alarm was triggered. Shit! Harry cursed loudly inside his mind as he felt the wards inside the castle tighten. Chapter 127, Action is all that left. Grindelwald's cell, Nurmengard Castle, Austria. Thankfully, the cell door stayed open even after the alarm was triggered, or all his subtle, but hard work would have gone down the drain. His hard work did go down the drain as soon as the alarms were triggered, but he at least had something to show for. He waved his hand in the air with a dismissive look on his face, releasing a specific amount of raw magic in the air to contaminate the magic around him. He didn't want anyone tracing back the magical signature to him. After that, he finally entered the cell, only to find the palest man he had ever seen sitting in the far corner of the cell. The man was staring at him with his mismatched eyes, and Harry could clearly see that the man was extremely curious about him. The man wasn't scared, nor did he seem to be afraid of Harry, but he was simply intrigued by Harry. All four of the man's limbs were shackled to the wall, not that Harry was worried about the man trying to attack him. Right now, Harry was physically 147% stronger than a ritually enhanced adult wizard. He could probably push that number to 150% before turning himself into a broken pile of flesh and bones, but Harry decided to stay his hand as the number 147 was a multiple of 7, and 7 is probably the most powerful magical number. Now, Harry was planning to create some sort of hard exoskeleton under his skin. He will start working with his head, his neck, and his torso before creating an exoskeleton for all of his limbs. He wondered if Nymphadora could replicate this feat, as he got the idea of physically modifying his body from her. He believed that it should be possible even though her powers worked differently from the way he was doing things. Alas, she wasn't a part of the Lost Garden. Maybe, he would show her how to use her morphing powers more effectively if she ever joins Lost Garden. Well, anyway, he decided to ponder about the clumsy metamorphmagus on a later date as he had other important things to deal with. Like the former Dark Lord staring at him with unhidden curiosity. So, who do you work for? The man asked curiously. Harry simply snorted in amusement at that question before morphing back into his real form. He admired Gellert Grindelwald on some level and he believed that this conversation needed to be done from face to face. It might sound foolish of him, but he believed that a face-to-face conversation would bear him better results. A look of recognition appeared on Gellert's face but simply ignored that and waved his hand in the air when he heard some noises down the hall. Gellert frowned as he felt something shift around him, but he couldn't put his finger on it. What did you do? Gellert asked Harry with a frown. You are quite a perceptive man. In a sense, I changed our locations so that nobody can interrupt us, Harry claimed softly. He simply transported Gellert and himself into the mirror dimension, so even though everything around them looked completely the same, they were no longer inside Nurmengard Castle. Though Harry was surprised that Gellert was able to notice the shift. Not to be arrogant or anything, but Harry's control over the spell was even better than the Ancient One's, but he was still noticed. I will take your word for it, Gellert hummed thoughtfully. So, what brings you here, to my humble abode, Mr. Potter? The man asked with a polite grin on his face. I see. Dumbledore has been visiting you quite regularly, Harry stated firmly, and Gellert simply shrugged dismissively. For whatever reason, that man seems to be obsessed with me. Do you have any idea why? Harry asked as he casually sat down on the other side of the cell. And I should answer your questions, why? Gellert asked mockingly, wondering if the boy was going to threaten him or not. He had so many questions in his mind. He had heard a lot about the boy from Albus, but the boy being a metamorphmagus was not one of them. Then there was the fact that the boy was able to break into Nurmengard. The break-in wasn't as smooth as the boy was probably expecting it to be as the boy triggered the alarms, but the boy still managed to get past the wards. That was most impressive. Is there a reason why you wouldn't? Harry asked as he raised his brows at the man, and the man gave him a toothy grin. That's true, Gellert admitted. There is a prophecy about you and the madman named Voldemort. Apparently, only you can beat him, Gellert revealed nonchalantly. Interesting. Harry inclined his head with a thoughtful look on his face. He already knew that much. And yet here I am, not under his thumb. That fact must be frustrating for him, Harry stated, and Gellert barked out a laugh. You have no idea, Gellert assured Harry. So, why are you really here? I don't believe you broke into Nurmengard just to have a casual chat with me, Gellert asked, losing some of his amusement. I am here for your knowledge, Harry answered honestly, as he wouldn't gain anything by beating around the bush from a man like Gellert Grindelwald. My knowledge? Gellert asked as he inclined his head with a frown. You already know legilimency. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Albus has no idea what he is messing with, Gellert added with a mirthful glint in his eyes. He didn't hate Albus, in fact, he cared about him, but Albus could be too controlling for his own good. Yes, on all accounts, Harry answered with a smirk, making Gellert nod his head in understanding. Am I going to live through the night? Gellert asked casually. With how forthcoming Harry was being, he didn't believe that he was going to live through the night. He didn't feel anything except for acceptance. That depends, Harry stated, making Gellert blink in surprise. With a bit of hesitance, he simply urged Harry to continue. You have two options in front of you. First, we make a deal. I will get all of your knowledge and in exchange, you will have your freedom, but you will have to join Lost Garden, my group, Harry revealed, and Gellert couldn't help but give Harry an incredulous look. And the second? Gellert asked sarcastically, as there were a few problems with the first option the boy gave him. First of all, he was still in this prison because he wanted to, and secondly, why would he ever agree to work for a 14-year-old? He would admit, Harry was not a normal 14-year-old. That much was confirmed as the boy was able to break into Nurmengard, but there was a limit to how good a 14-year-old could be. The second, I rip the knowledge you possess straight out of your mind before turning you into a mindless doll and then have you working for me, Harry stated coldly as the amusement disappeared from his face, only to be replaced by cruelty. Gellert was quite aback by the shift, but to be honest, he didn't believe Harry could achieve that. Funny. Do you really want? Gellert froze when he felt a mental probe pierce right through his occlumency shield like a hot knife through butter. Gellert would admit that his occlumency shields weren't as strong as they were in his heyday, but they were still unmatched except for a few exceptions. Gellert winced back in pain as there was nothing he could do to stop the mental probe, but instead of shuffling through his mind, the mental probe retreated after all of his occlumency shields were pierced. He realized that the boy was only giving him proof that he could carry out the second option without any issue. For the first time tonight, Gellert felt afraid. Dying was one thing. He had accepted that long ago, but becoming someone's mindless slave was not something he ever considered. It was a fate worse than death, Gellert decided. Now, do you believe me? Harry asked coldly as he stared straight into Gellert's eyes. He really wanted Gellert to join Lost Garden, as having someone like him in their group was going to be extremely useful. He wanted Gellert to join Lost Garden with his mind intact, as he would be more useful to him that way, but he could still use a mindless one. The mindless one was going to be a lot weaker, as the doll would lose the ability to think on its own, but having the mindless one was still better than not having him in Lost Garden at all. Harry speculated that Voldemort was stronger than Grindelwald when it came to raw magic. While both of them were magical titans, Voldemort had pushed himself further through rituals, which gave Voldemort an advantage. Alas, raw magic wasn't everything. Grindelwald possessed unmatched experience on his side to even the odds. While Voldemort had also led Death Eaters from the front lines, he never faced any opposition as Grindelwald did. Voldemort always butchered his way through with pure might. Harry wouldn't say that Voldemort wasn't skilled, but he wasn't as skilled and experienced as Grindelwald when it came to magical combat. Yes, he had fought Dumbledore during the war, but Dumbledore was no longer in his prime, and Harry suspected that Voldemort is only able to match Dumbledore because of Dumbledore's lack of ruthlessness. Meanwhile, Gellert Grindelwald had no such problems. Having the man on his side would be a great boon. So, what is it going to be? Harry asked as he raised his eyebrows at the former Dark Lord. Chapter 128, The Enemy Who Planned, 3. Minister's Office, Ministry of Magic, Britain, November 1, 1994. Cornelius, you cannot allow that boy to dictate your actions. What do you think the rest of the world would think? The rest of the wizarding world is already watching us thanks to the Triwizard Tournament, and if we allow a 14-year-old to blow us off like this, then we will be treated as laughingstock, Lucius Malfoy explained smoothly, looking extremely distressed for his friend. Cornelius, I believe Lucius is right. We cannot have the ministry look weak, especially after Dumbledore failed to secure the goblet, Dolores agreed sweetly. The ministry needs to take a stand, and we would look like clowns if we don't make him participate in the tournament, Dolores added sweetly. She still remembered the way Harry Potter had humiliated her, and she would have her revenge, one way or another. Nobody treated her like that and walked away unscathed. Do you really think I should force the boy to participate? Cornelius asked before wiping off sweat from his forehead. Not just that, you should use this opportunity to bring him back to Britain. Harry Potter is a citizen of our country, but he left our country for whatever convoluted reason. How do you think it makes us look in the international community? Lucius Malfoy asked as he raised his eyebrows at Cornelius, and Cornelius had to admit, he wasn't happy with Albus sending the boy to another country when they had Hogwarts, the best wizarding school in the world. It made them look like incompetent fools in front of the international wizarding community. He even used a fake name to fool us all this time. If he knew that Harry Potter isn't his real name, he should have informed the ministry about that. Using a fake name is a crime. Dolores smiled sickly. Yes, she would get the boy back for humiliating her. Lucius Malfoy smiled at her words. Harry Potter using a fake name for all this time presented him with a unique opportunity, and he wasn't going to squander this opportunity. Yes, we can't forget about that. The boy needs to answer for his crimes. He had been fooling the people of our country for all this time. The boy needs to be brought in front of the Wizengamot, Lucius explained with a sneer. What about Sirius Black? He would definitely interfere. All of a sudden Cornelius remembered that Sirius Black would obviously try to oppose them. What about him? He has proven that he is not a fitting guardian. After all, what sort of godfather doesn't even know the name of his godson? Lucius asked in a mocking tone, making Dolores smile fearfully at those words. Cornelius snorted in amusement. True, but Lucius, that won't be enough to overrule his opinions. Cornelius shook his head. Yes, but there is a nifty law I discovered recently. According to the law, if the last surviving member of a prominent pureblood family is a minor, then it is the responsibility of the guardian to teach the minor how to handle his family holdings and the customs of Wizengamot. The guardian also must bring his ward to monthly Wizengamot sessions when Hogwarts is not in session, and in case the Guardian fails to carry out any of this duty, the Ministry has the right to assign the minor a new fitting Guardian, Lucius revealed with a smirk on his face, making both Dolores and Cornelius perk up. Both Dolores and Cornelius knew what Lucius meant by prominent pure-blood family. Any family with a seat in the Wiesengamot was referred to as prominent pure-blood families, and they also knew what Lucius meant by a fitting guardian. Oh, I like this, but Lucius, do you really want to take the boy as your ward? Cornelius asked with a doubtful look on his face. Lucius looked somewhat disheartened before he finally started to speak. Yes, I will take the responsibility if that is what it takes. Lucius admitted with a grimace. He needed to act as a reluctant but determined man even though he was waiting for Harry Potter to get under his thumb. All right, Lucius, if that is what you want. I will send the summons for the emergency meeting tomorrow morning, what do you think, Lucius? Cornelius asked, and the man simply nodded his head. We should get this over with as quickly as possible, especially with the Triwizard Tournament hanging over the boy's head. I know that Harry Potter is not his real name, but he is only a 14-year-old. What does he even know about unbreakable contracts? Lucius asked rhetorically, making both Cornelius and Dolores nod in agreement. Headmaster's office, Hogwarts. Albus has been wondering how Harry came to know how unbreakable contracts worked since Harry told them that the contract wouldn't work because his name wasn't Harry Potter. After returning to his office, he had been continuously revisiting the memory of the whole interaction, and after hours of research, Albus was almost certain that the second prophecy also referred to Harry Potter. Albus grimaced when he remembered that his name wasn't Harry Potter. For some time, Albus considered that Tom might have succeeded in taking over Harry's body, but once again he couldn't be sure. If it was Tom masquerading as Harry Potter, then it would explain the boy's knowledge when it came to unbreakable contracts, but that doesn't explain why the boy decided to save the Weasleys. None of them couldn't have known that Harry was there, so if he hadn't interfered, then nobody would have known he was there. If it was really Tom masquerading as Harry, then there was no way he would have saved the Weasleys by revealing his hand. Tom was much smarter than that, and he wouldn't have revealed himself if he wasn't prepared. Albus was brought out of his musings when he heard something knock on the window. He turned his head only to find an owl knocking at his window. With a confused look on his face, he stood up and started to make his way toward the window. Owls at this time of the night weren't common, which bore the question, why would someone send him a letter at this time of the night? He opened the window to let the owl in. The owl flew in and landed on the windowsill before offering its leg. Albus quickly untied the letter, and as soon as he was done, the owl flew off. Albus gazed at the retreating owl before finally opening the letter. It was the summons for an emergency Wiesengamot meeting tomorrow morning. Albus didn't like the timing of the summons, and he immediately deduced that Cornelius was up to something. He stroked his beard with a thoughtful look on his face as he made his way back to his table. He was already planning to use not some legal means to bring Harry back to Britain, but if Cornelius was making his job easier, then who was he to complain? Chapter 129, Action is all that left, 2. Grindelwald's cell, Nurmengard Castle, Austria. So, what is it going to be? Harry asked as he raised his eyebrows at the former Dark Lord. Gellert eyed Harry warily. He could only accept the first option. What other choice did he have? He didn't want to end up as someone's slave, but becoming a willing slave was much better than becoming a mindless one, especially when he was going to end up as a slave either way. After some consideration, he realized that he might be able to get something out of the deal if he joined the boy willingly. What do I get if I choose the first option? You don't expect to work for free, do you? Gellert asked as he leaned back on the wall. He was still somewhat afraid of the boy as the boy possessed the power to break his mind, but he still decided to explore his options. Harry hummed at his question for a couple of seconds before he finally started to speak. You are getting your freedom, Harry pointed out, looking like it was the most obvious fact. Well, there is that, but to be honest, I don't care much about freedom. If I wanted my freedom, then these shackles and this castle couldn't have stopped me. They might have imprisoned me, but I am still imprisoned due to choice. Gellert explained with a small chuckle. Harry tapped his cheek with a thoughtful look on his face before nodding his head in agreement. Gellert might have lost the war, but a lot of his loyal supporters disappeared after the war and decided to lie low. Right now, some of them were in influential positions, and if Gellert wanted, he could have used their influence to escape prison. Harry refused to believe that a man like Gellert lacked the ability to send messages outside the prison. That's true. Harry admitted. From what I know about you, you are a man of research. You love exploring magic as a whole, don't you? Harry asked. Both of them knew that it was a rhetorical question, but Gellert still nodded his head in assent, so Harry decided to continue speaking. If you join me, you will get access to new branches of magic, Harry explained, and even though Gellert didn't want to, he ended up giving Harry a skeptical look. It was understandable that Gellert was skeptical of his claim. After all, no matter what, he was still a 14-year-old, so Harry decided to give the man some proof. Harry raised his hand and their surroundings started to transform. The shackles restraining Gellert disappeared much to his shock, and the cell unfurled and started to twist before the hall outside the cell started to morph into something unrecognizable. Satisfied now? Harry asked, and the man dumbly nodded his head while looking around. It wasn't exactly a spell, as Harry simply decided to manipulate the mirror dimension. Harry decided to use this instead of using a spell because this display was more impressive and impactful than any spell he could cast at this moment. It took Gellert somewhere around half a minute to regain his bearings. All right. I believe you, Gellert admitted reluctantly. He knew nothing about a branch of magic while a 14-year-old had him beat in that department. It was a bitter pill to swallow. But there is something else I want to, Gellert spoke hesitantly, making Harry raise his brows in question. Don't you think you are asking for too much? I believe I am already giving you a good deal, Harry stated airily. Well, out with it, Harry huffed as he waved his hand in the air. I want you to free all of my followers imprisoned here in Nurmengard, Gellert declared his demand, making Harry give the man an incredulous look. You have to be kidding, right? Harry asked in an amused tone, but when Gellert didn't smile or laugh, the look on Harry's face turned cold. Why the foo *k am I going to do that? I have nothing to gain, Harry stated while glaring at Gellert. All of them will join your Lost Garden, that is the name of your group, right? Gellert asked. If he was being honest, he knew that the chances of Harry helping him free his followers from Nurmengard were extremely low, but he still had to try. All of them were in prison because they joined his cause, and he didn't like the idea of leaving them here to rot. Really? I don't believe you can decide for them anymore, Harry pointed out as he narrowed his eyes at Gellert. Yes, they will. It might have been decades since they stopped being my followers, but they are still loyal to me, and I believe they will happily choose servitude if you free them. There are only two types of people in this world. Leaders and followers, and all of them know in exactly which category they belong, Gellert explained, and Harry hummed thoughtfully at his words. All right. I will give all of them a chance, but if they don't agree. Harry decided to leave the threat hanging in the air, and Gellert simply nodded his head in understanding. While Gellert thought that Harry would kill them if they didn't join his group, Harry didn't have any plan of killing anyone. He was simply going to obliviate them. He wanted to avoid any unnecessary bloodshed, even with a murder hobo mother stuck inside his head, but Gellert didn't need to know that. He wanted Gellert to think that he would kill anyone who refuses the offer so that Gellert would try harder to make them join. Now, the whole process was going to be quite hectic and time-taking, but Harry was prepared to go through with it as he would be getting a lot of followers, which was obviously a good thing from his point of view. By the way, do you want me to do the talking or shall I leave it to you? Harry asked curiously. Let me do the talking. They followed me and they knew me. No offense, but you are nobody to them, Gellert stated with a smile. Some taken, Harry offered with a mock-offended look on his face. Just tell me which ones of them used to be your followers and I will bring them here. Harry stated, and moments later, projections with the view of the insides of the cells started to appear in the air. With the alarms already triggered, it would be impossible for Gellert to have any constructive conversation with any of his former followers, so Harry decided to bring them here, and right now, it looked like someone had kicked the anthill with Aurors and hit wizards arriving at Nurmengard Castle with port keys. Not that Harry was worried, as right now, they were inside the mirror dimension. Gellert was intrigued by whatever spell Harry used to bring up the projections, but he decided to shelve the question for time being as he had other important things to deal with. Him, her, him. With that, Gellert started to point at the projections so that Harry could locate all of his followers. Nocturne Alley, England. Hymera sauntered through the dark streets of the Nocturne Alley like she owned the damned place. While she was originally from Russia, she left the country as quickly as she could after escaping from the vile clutches of Hydra. After she realized that she wasn't going to get any sort of justice from either the magical government or the Muggle one, she decided to make herself scarce, as there was always a chance that Hydra would catch up to her. The only reason she was able to escape from that place was because her mutation had triggered at the most opportune moment. They didn't expect her to trigger with regenerative powers, so they tried to stun her after she triggered, but her powers made it impossible for the tranquilizers to work, and after that, they tried to gun her down with machine guns when they realized that tranquilizers don't work, but even guns failed to put her down. Ultimately, she was able to escape by accidental apparition after crossing the wards. She didn't know how to apparate, but she knew the basic theory and she was desperate enough to escape. Alas, her escape wasn't perfect. Her left leg was left behind as she splinched, hence accidental apparition, but thankfully, she was able to regrow her left leg within a few minutes, much to her relief. After leaving Russia, Hymera arrived on the continent and since then she had been traveling around, not wanting to settle in one place as she was always worried that Hydra might find her. In her travels, she had visited Britain and Nocturne Alley quite a few times as it was the perfect place for people like her, so she knew how to act inside Nocturne Alley if she wanted to avoid being targeted by low-life thugs. Her plan obviously worked as nobody dared to impede her stride even though she noticed quite a few people watching her intently from some distance. Hymera arrived in front of the bar named the Tipsy Pixie. It was quite a high-class bar, frequented by even high-class people, which made this a nice place to gather some information and if that doesn't work, then she could always try to buy some information from the hookers and strippers inside the bar. Hymera took off the hood of her cloak, revealing her face before handing a galleon to one of the bouncers. This was the first time she was visiting this establishment with her own gold, but she did have gold to spend, thanks to her new, but generous employer. The bouncer nodded his head before opening the door for her and Hymera simply entered the establishment without any more posturing. Chapter 130, Action is all that left, 3. Hymera entered the bar only to be blasted on her face by the loud music and the fancy flashing lights. It took a moment for her eyes and ears to get adjusted. The place wasn't much different from Muggle nightclubs, not that prominent purebloods knew that. Hymera eyed the strippers dancing on the poles with their chests bared for everyone to see. There were some people gathered around the strippers and the way they were tossing their gold at the strippers, Hymera decided that they were prominent members of Wizarding Britain, which meant purebloods. A crowd of young and tipsy people could be seen dancing on the dance floor, looking completely lost in the music and alcohol. Hymera finally arrived at the bar and ordered a glass of white rum along with a deluxe service. After getting her drink and a token for her deluxe service, she made her way into one of the empty private booths. She tapped the token on the doorframe to gain access to the booth. The booth wasn't that big, but the booth was big enough for all kinds of action. There was a center table in the middle of the booth with a dancing pole in the middle of the table, and the table was surrounded by a circular velvety couch. Hymera sat down and nodded her head in satisfaction. The couch was really comfortable. She didn't even have to wait a minute before the part of her deluxe package finally entered the room. Her deluxe package was dressed in a black latex coat, but as soon as the door closed behind her, the woman took off the coat and tossed it aside, revealing her black latex corset with red accents. The woman's boobs were emphasized thanks to the sexy corset she was wearing, but that wasn't the end of it. She was only wearing a tiny latex thong to cover the modesty of her lower body with latex stockings to go along with the rest of her get-up. The woman untied her silky blonde hair before shaking her head to unfurl her hair to make herself look more appealing, and Hymera had to admit, the woman was extremely beautiful. The woman stared at Hymera with her bright green eyes, but her eyes weren't as vibrant as Harry's. The woman smiled at Hymera saucily as she had noticed Hymera checking her out, but what the woman didn't know was the fact that Hymera was checking her out for a completely different reason. So, what first, darling? Business or pleasure? The woman sultrily. Looking pretty nice there, Sandy, Hymera greeted the woman as she took a small sip from her glass. The woman, now recognized as Sandy, narrowed her eyes at Hymera. Do I know you? Sandy asked as she stared at Hymera. Sandy recognized the scar on Hymera's cheek, but the rest of the face didn't make any sense to her, and Hymera didn't even have a tongue, to begin with, and this woman was clearly speaking. Hymera? Sandy asked in a disbelieving tone, making Hymera smile. Took you long enough, Hymera commented with a grin before taking another sip from her glass. Sandy simply sat down on the couch and scooted closer to Hymera. The foo *k happened to you, darling? She blurted out with a shocked look on her face. Well, I was forced to choose new employment and my new employer is very generous, Hymera answered cryptically, making Sandy stare at Hymera with wide eyes. You foo *king with me, right? Sandy asked with a growl before smiling slyly. You look like Hymera, but you are not Hymera. She looked like a freak show, and you don't get to heal from wounds like that, darling. So, who are you for real? Sandy asked with a grin on her face. Thanks for the glowing description, Hymera commented drily. Unfortunately for you, I don't care if you believe me or not. I have paid the gold for the deluxe package and I will receive the services, Hymera stated firmly, not wanting to waste her time anymore. Sandy stared at Hymera intently for the next few moments before finally nodding her head. Fair enough, Sandy shrugged as she leaned back on the couch. You wouldn't mind if I get something to drink, would you? Sandy asked and Hymera simply gestured her to go ahead. Sandy leaned down and pulled out a bottle of vodka from under the center table along with a glass before pouring herself a small drink. The Death Eaters have started to move again. What can you tell me about that? Hymera asked, making Sandy stiffen a bit even though she tried to play it off like nothing. Not much for sure, but there are some rumors floating around. Sandy revealed hesitantly. She knew that passing around information about the Death Eaters was dangerous, but it came with the job. They had accepted the gold and if she refused to follow through with the agreement, it would be bad for their reputation, and a bad reputation would be bad for business. Take this with a pinch of salt, but the rumors are that the dark mark is becoming darker with each passing day, Sandy revealed before pouring herself another drink, and when Hymera extended her glass too, Sandy dutifully poured her a drink too. What about the current state of affairs in the Nocturne Alley? Hymera asked. Not much has changed, but recently, some werewolves and vampires have been sighted around. Most of the time, they lay low, not wanting to draw much attention to them, but recently, they have been acting up. Once again, take this with a pinch of salt, but the rumors are that the hags might start showing up too, Sandy revealed with a grin. That concludes our business, Sandy stated and Hymera nodded her head in understanding. Though you still owe me a dance and some service, Hymera pointed out, making Sandy grin sultrily. She placed her glass and the vodka bottle in the edge of the couch before she climbed up on the table sensually. Sandy stared at Hymera intently before snapping her corset open with a sultry grin on her face, revealing her bare breasts to Hymera. Jacqueline's pad. Why, Lost Garden though? Katerina Cabal asked curiously while looking down at the sigil of the Lost on her arm. She heard some agreements from her fellow escapees. At first, they were dumbfounded when all of a sudden alarms were triggered, but then all of a sudden, they appeared inside a twisted hall of the Nurmengard castle with former leader Gellert Grindelwald standing beside a young teenager. They were even more surprised when Gellert introduced the boy as Harry Potter. Most of them knew who Harry Potter was as he was the sole survivor of a killing curse, and they were downright gobsmacked when Gellert revealed that he had decided to work for Harry Potter. Gellert wanted them to accept the same offer in exchange for their freedom. There were 6 of them who downright refused the offer, and by the time Gellert finished delivering the pitch, 62 of them decided to accept the offer and work for Harry Potter while 10 more decided to decline the offer. Harry Potter, their new boss, straight out obliviated the 16 of them. For whatever reason, Gellert looked somewhat relieved at that. And after that, Harry Potter had started to place the mark of their arms known as the Sigil of the Lost before finally bringing them here through a green sparkling portal. Right now, none of them knew where they were, but most of them seemed to be quite overjoyed as they were finally free after so many years. The reason is somewhat convoluted, but I will try to explain, Harry answered thoughtfully before taking a small pause. Because our group will not be a part of the wider world. We will build our own place and the rest of the world won't have a place in this group of ours. Harry explained thoughtfully. To be honest, it was hard to put his feelings into words. I see. That explained quite a bit, Gellert muttered thoughtfully. So, what now? He asked Harry. He was sure that Harry didn't free them because he wanted to give them a good life with sunshine and rainbows. Right now, all of you are practically useless to me with being wandless and all that, Harry pointed out, and even though it didn't sound nice, he was right. But before getting wands for all of you, I will be rejuvenating all of you back to your primes. All of you are way past your prime and I want all of you at your best, Harry explained, surprising everyone, including Gellert. You are going to rejuvenate us, how? Gellert asked with a dumbfounded look on his face. Yes, I can. The theory is very simple, but the feat seemed impossible until now because nobody was powerful enough to carry out the whole process, Harry stated like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Then there is the fact that nobody is intelligent enough to go through all the calculations on the go. Well, anyone except for me, that is, Harry mused internally. And you have the power to rejuvenate all of us? A wizard asked from the crowd and Harry simply nodded his head without any hesitation, making some people scoff at him. The man who asked Harry turned to look at Gellert. You aren't believing him for real, are you? The man asked disbelievingly. After hearing the man's question, Gellert chuckled in amusement before shaking his head. He is yet to give me any reason to mistrust him, and until proven otherwise, I will choose to believe him," Gellert stated, making Harry smile at him while some of the new members of Lost Garden didn't know how to react to that statement. "Then let me go first. It's not that I don't trust you or him. After all, I am here, but I don't want anything to happen to you in case something goes wrong during the process." Katarina Cabal stepped forward before declaring with a determined look on her face. Harry turned toward Gellert, who gave him a nod after some pondering. Harry turned toward Katarina with a soft smile on his face. "Well, let's get started then," he stated joyfully while staring at Katarina. Chapter 131, Preparation. They made, Jacqueline's pad, an hour ago. Jacqueline stared at herself in the mirror with a hint of trepidation twisting inside her mind. A small part of her mind felt like a monster was staring back at her, but the rest of her was simply content, even though quite a bit eager for some more intense action. After returning from her short, but satisfying trip, she made her way straight to the training room to clear her mind. After all, she had a lot to think about. Jacqueline always knew that she loved fighting. She loved the thrill, the adrenaline pumping through her veins, and more than that, she loved winning, but today, her little outing has made her realize quite a few things about herself. Yes, it was true that she loved fighting, but more so, she loved fighting where there was a real danger to her life. The thrill from a fight like that was nothing like she had felt before, but that wasn't the end of the problems. After killing both of the grunts, Jacqueline had realized that she loved killing. Having the power to decide if a person lives or dies was simply euphoric for her. After returning to her home, she had checked her panties, and just like she suspected, they were damp. Jacqueline was sure that she would have orgasmed if she had killed a couple of more people, and she knew that it would have been the best orgasm of her life. Like any other healthy teenager, she had masturbated quite a few times, but she never reached the high her friends kept mentioning all the time, so she stopped. She also never tried to date anyone, as she never found anyone she would like to date. At least, that was the excuse she gave everyone, but in reality, she never felt attracted to any of the boys or the girls she knew. Alas, it was only today that she realized that she got off from murder. It was wrong on so many levels that she didn't even know where to start, but at the same time, it felt so right. It felt like she had found a missing piece of herself she didn't even know was missing in the first place. Most of her wanted her to kill again so that she could finally reach the high she had been looking for years, but a part of her was making her feel like a monster. It was a small part of her, but it wasn't small enough to dismiss nonchalantly. To be honest, Jacqueline didn't know what to do. That is why she kept staring at her reflection in the mirror without moving in the slightest for the next 10 minutes. She closed her eyes with a tired look on her face, and her shoulders slumped before she finally came to the conclusion that she needed to talk with someone. It was pretty obvious that she couldn't tell her parents, they would never understand. While neither of her parents were paragons of goodness, she was sure that they wouldn't give her blessings to become a murder hobo. It was the same for any of her former friends, she didn't trust any of them enough to reveal that she had killed people in the first place. She could always tell Brittany, but the younger girl wouldn't understand. She wasn't involved in combat like she or Harry were. Harry, Jacqueline mumbled thoughtfully. Yes, she could always talk with Harry. Yes, it would be embarrassing as foo*k, but she trusted Harry with her life. Then there was Hymera. Hymera was a paranoid bitch, but she went through a lot of horrible shit, so she might be able to help her too. Jacqueline at least decided to give it a try, but then all of a sudden the wards pinged her about the arrival of Harry and 63 more individuals. The foo*k is he doing? Jacqueline questioned herself inside her mind with a completely dumbfounded look on her face. Why the foo*k? There are so many unknown people in my backyard. She asked internally in bewilderment. She had so many questions, but unfortunately, no answer. She badly wanted to know what the hell Harry was up to, but before that, she needed to take a chilled shower as she was still somewhat bothered by the heat she was feeling in her core. Present time. After getting dressed in a nice set of clothes, fitting of her station, she finally decided to make an appearance. Through the wards, she already knew that all of her unannounced guests were in the background, so she started to make her way toward her backyard, and as soon as she arrived in her backyard, a lot of heads turned toward her, but she decided to ignore all of them and look for Harry. Her eyes finally landed on the boy she was looking for, and he was already turning his head toward her so that he could greet her. Jacqueline started to open her mouth to say something snarky, but she froze when her gaze focused on the man standing beside Harry. The man was probably the palest man she had ever laid her eyes upon, and her breath hitched in fear when the man's mismatched eyes focused on her. Jacqueline never had much interest in history, but she recognized the man in an instant. There was no way she wouldn't recognize Gellert Grindelwald, especially when he was looking exactly how he looked during the Wizarding World War. Jacqueline had no idea how it was possible in the first place, but she didn't want to take any chances with such a dangerous man standing right in front of her, and that is why she reached for her wand, but she was stopped by Harry, much to her confusion, but then all of a sudden, everything finally clicked inside her mind. You never told me that you were going to recruit him, Jacqueline hissed furiously as she jerked her head toward Gellert Grindelwald. I changed some of my plans on the way to Nurmengard, Harry admitted unsurely. And who might this young lady be? Gellert asked in an amused tone. She is one of my best friends, Jacqueline Harper. Harry introduced Jacqueline to Gellert before turning toward Jacqueline, who was still staring at Gellert with unmasked trepidation. And Jacqueline, this is Gellert Grindelwald, though I believe you already recognized him. Harry introduced Gellert to Jacqueline with a beaming smile on his face. Once again, Jacqueline was completely lost for words. She didn't even know how to react, so she simply decided to gape at Harry and Gellert Grindelwald. Jacqueline believed that Harry could beat the man if it came to that, but standing in front of Gellert Grindelwald was still kind of scary. It took her a whole minute to finally regain her bearings, and after that, it didn't take her long to realize that Gellert Grindelwald had probably agreed to follow Harry, but why and how? She knew Harry well enough to know that Harry would never follow anyone. So, it was Gellert King Grindelwald who decided to follow him, and his followers decided to follow him. Once again, she had so many questions, but she decided to start with the question which was bothering her the most. Why the hell does he look like that? He should be as old as Dumbledore. Jacqueline asked in a bewildered tone. Well, I decided to rejuvenate him, Harry stated like it was the most obvious thing in the world, and Jacqueline's eyes almost popped out of her head at his words. She slowly turned toward Gellert, who could only give her a sympathetic look. He also went through a similar type of episode when Harry successfully rejuvenated Katarina. Of course, he rejuvenated all of them. Jacqueline grumbled unhappily inside her mind as she looked around, only to find that the whole group was in their prime. Jacqueline rubbed her temples before she decided to ask something simple next. All right. So, where are they going to stay? Jacqueline asked, preparing herself for another incoming shock. I have asked Morcy and Norton to buy some tents, so they could stay here for a couple of days, Harry answered, and Jacqueline simply nodded her head in understanding. She didn't even bother with the fact that Harry offered her backyard to a rejuvenated Gellert Grindelwald and his similarly rejuvenated followers. Don't worry, they will leave as soon as they acquire wands to use, Harry added as he could already imagine that Jacqueline was way past getting shocked anymore. I see. I think it has been quite a long day for me. I am gonna call this a day. Jacqueline waved at Harry before she started to head back into her house. Is she going to be all right? Gellert asked as he watched Jacqueline's retreating back. Don't worry, she will be all right. By the way, I was wondering if you know anything about the guild or the Hydra? Harry asked after Jacqueline was finally gone. He decided to have a chat with her after he was done here. He knew that she wasn't going to sleep anytime soon. He knew her well enough to know that she would be in the training room blowing off some steam. I don't know what this guild is, but I have heard about Hydra. They played a major part on the Muggle side of the Second World War. I never liked those Basta *ds and I killed a bunch of them when I discovered them trying to abduct a couple of my followers, Gellert answered thoughtfully. Is that so? Tell me everything you know about them, Harry ordered, and Gellert started to tell Harry everything he knew about Hydra. Chapter 132, Preparation they made, 2. You forgot to tell him that you kept killing all the Hydra agents you came across after that incident, one of the wizards from the crowd pointed out helpfully. Right now, Gellert's followers were setting up the tents, so they could be seen milling around. Harry was also bleeding on the inside as he had to spend a lot of gold on the tents and their food. He needed to find a source of income or he might end up spending all of his savings within a week, and that would be quite hurtful for Harry. Maybe, he could start taking some mercenary jobs, or they could always loot the guild bases. Well, they shouldn't have tried to abduct my men, Gellert defended dismissively. I am not sure, but during my time, a man named Johann Schmidt was leading Hydra, and apparently, he was a superhuman or something like that, Gellert added with a shrug. You weren't able to interrogate any of them? Harry asked, making Gellert scowl unhappily. They were very much dedicated to their cause, and all of their agents had a fake tooth filled with cyanide, so as soon as they realized that they were going to be caught, they would commit suicide, Gellert admitted with a grimace, and Harry simply hummed thoughtfully. I see. Harry mumbled thoughtfully as he started to consider his options. Gellert wasn't able to tell him much, but his information wasn't completely pointless. Thanks to Gellert, Harry finally came to know that Hydra knew about the Wixen for quite some time, and Hydra was quite an old organization, as Gellert was sure that they came to be before the 1800s, even though he wasn't exactly sure when they came to be. So, what did they do to you to earn your ire? Gellert asked casually. He was wondering if the Hydra had tried to kidnap Harry Potter. It was something Hydra would try. I have a follower named Hymera, and it is not my story to tell. You can ask her, Harry answered. He didn't feel that it was his place to reveal her story to some strangers from her point of view. Gellert nodded his head in agreement with a hum. By the way, what is this guild? Gellert asked, and Harry started to tell him everything he knew about the guild, which wasn't much, but he knew the location of a few of their branches and he could always start from there. Some time later. As expected, Harry found Jacqueline in the training room, casting spells at the training dummies. Jacqueline looked somewhat lost and frustrated from the look on her face, so Harry decided to wait for her to let off the steam. The session continued for a bit more than half an hour before she finally decided to take a break, but it was clear that she wasn't anywhere close to calm. What did the poor dummy do to you? Harry asked with a soft smile on his face, and Jacqueline whipped around, only to find Harry leaning at the door frame. She was so lost in her thoughts that she didn't even notice his arrival. I needed to clear my mind, Jacqueline answered cryptically. I can see that, Harry admitted as he stepped inside the training room. So, what's on your mind? Harry asked softly as he continued to approach her. I had a really long day and it was hard to wrap my head around everything going on, Jacqueline admitted, but she still decided not to give him a straight answer. Harry stared at her with a complicated look on his face before finally releasing a sigh. Look, Jackie. I am sorry for bringing Grindelwald and his followers to your house without telling you anything, Harry apologized genuinely. Jacqueline stared at Harry with a pondering look on her face for a few moments before nodding her head. Apology accepted. You have to understand, Harry, I am not angry at you for bringing them, but I am unhappy because you decided not to tell me anything before bringing them here, Jacqueline sighed tiredly. Yeah, I shouldn't have done that, Harry admitted his mistake. I promise, I won't do this again, Harry promised with a sullen look on his face. I know, Jacqueline smiled at Harry before she finally plopped down on the floor, and Harry also sat down beside her before wrapping an arm around her shoulder to pull her closer. So, you want to talk about it? Harry asked as Jacqueline snuggled toward him. It's embarrassing, Jacqueline mumbled in a low tone, but thanks to their close proximity, Harry clearly heard her words. Harry decided not to push her anymore and simply kept hugging her for the next few minutes. Well, you already know, I killed today. With that, Jacqueline finally started to speak after a few minutes of complete silence. By the time Jacqueline finished her story, Harry's face was a bit red, and if he was being honest, he wasn't expecting the issue to be something like this. Even his beyond genius level intelligence wasn't enough to understand women. He was expecting her to feel troubled, after all, she took a life for the first time, but he wasn't expecting the problem to be something like this. Mom, some help, please, Harry requested, making Lily laugh in amusement. Lily already knew that Jacqueline wasn't into romance, but she was into fights. Though she didn't expect her to be into murders. Well, if Hadrian played his cards right, then her Hadrian would have his own Bellatrix. Tell me, Hadrian. Does it change anything for you? Lily asked after she finally calmed down. If he didn't have other important things to deal with, Harry would have loved to give her a stink eye for laughing. No, it doesn't change anything for me. She is still my best friend and she is going to remain my best friend in the future too, Harry admitted, and Lily harumphed smugly. Then I don't see any problem, Lily pointed out. Look, Hadrian, all of us are kind of messed up. I am in love with you, my own son, and you love in the same way, so who are we to complain if she gets off from murders? Lily asked rhetorically. I already know that, Mom, and I wasn't planning to dissuade her or anything. Harry shook his head internally. I want to support her, but I don't know what to say, Harry clarified the problem he was having, making Lily blink in confusion. Oh, Lily trailed off sheepishly. Well, you could start by telling her how much you care about her and then move on. Explain that it's all right, Lily suggested unsurely, but this was the best she was able to come up with. I am a foo *king monster, Jacqueline wailed at the end of her explanation, only for Harry to frantically shake his head. No. No, you are not. You are probably the most caring person I have ever met, Harry cooed. You decided to help me, a complete stranger, without expecting anything in return. How can a person like that be a monster? Harry asked rhetorically as he pulled her closer to him, and Jacqueline was about to protest, but he quickly placed his finger on her lips to stop her from speaking. "You know, I care about you, right?" Harry asked, only for Jacqueline to nod her head without missing a beat. "Then trust me when I am saying it is all right," Harry stated firmly. "I know it is not normal, but who gives a foo *k? Harry asked with a grin. "The others." Jacqueline began to speak, but once again, Harry stopped her from continuing by placing a finger at her lips. "Foo *k the others. What they think or believe doesn't matter as long as you are happy. So, what if you get off from murders? Nobody is perfect." Harry said with a grin, making Jacqueline blink at him. "So, you are saying that it is all right for me to keep murdering people?" Jacqueline asked, only for Harry to nod his head. "I don't see any problem with that, but you would need to draw a line somewhere. I mean, you simply can't go and kill random people walking down the street just because you felt like it. If you start killing indiscriminately, then you will turn into the monster you are so afraid of," Harry explained, and after some pondering, Jacqueline finally nodded her head in understanding. She understood what Harry was trying to say, and she had to admit, Harry was right. She needed to have some control over herself. "I understand what you are trying to say," Jacqueline said as she separated a bit from Harry. "Good, and no matter what, I will always care about you," Harry said as he placed a kiss on her forehead, making Jacqueline flush a bit at his passionate words. "You are my best friend and you will always be my best friend," Harry added with a smile on his face, making Jacqueline grin at him. "That's not right," Harry mumbled as he shook his head a bit with a thoughtful look on his face. "Sister from another mother fits better, I believe," Harry revealed, surprising Jacqueline before he pulled Jacqueline into his arms for a familial hug. Chapter 133, Preparation They Made, 3. Similar types of headlines could be seen decorating newspapers from all over the world. Usually, wizarding newspapers took their sweet time reporting anything happening outside their country, but this time the news was something major. The newspaper companies were basically falling over each other to publish the news of Grindelwald's escape before anyone else. The ICW obviously tried to suppress the news, but by the time they finally came to a decision, the news was already spreading like wildfire. The guards posted in Nurmengard were the first ones to blow the whistle as they informed their family about the incident, and then their family members informed their family members and friends, and just like that, within the span of a few hours, the news was spread all over the world. It wasn't a surprise that people around the world were afraid, which was why riots were breaking out all over the world. Yes, Grindelwald was defeated and they lost the war, but there were several countries, which were under Grindelwald's rule during the war, and the horrors of war were still fresh in their minds. Grindelwald was an unstoppable force of nature, who was ultimately beaten by Albus Dumbledore, but that didn't mean that people were any less scared of Grindelwald. Grindelwald had built a terrifying reputation for himself, and his actions had affected the whole wizarding world, as the man was responsible for instigating the one and only wizarding world war to date, and now, the man was free again, but that wasn't all. He didn't escape on his own. The man had escaped along with his followers, which meant that recruitment was not one of his immediate concerns. Nurmengard Castle, Austria, November 2, 1994. Albus Dumbledore arrived at the Nurmengard Castle, and it seemed like someone had kicked an active anthill, not that Albus could blame them. Right now, everyone was scared, and the ICW was trying their best to get everything under their control, but only if everything could have been that easy. While most of Grindelwald's followers had escaped, some were left, and ICW was trying to interrogate them, but unfortunately for them, those who had been left behind had their memories erased. The ICW needed answers, and most importantly, they needed to look like they were doing something. That was why they decided to bring in Albus Dumbledore, the man who defeated Grindelwald, so that they could calm down the masses. The ICW had long given up on trying to suppress the news, so they were sure that the news of Dumbledore's arrival would also be spread around the world and people would start to somewhat calm down. "Supreme Mugwump, you are finally here!" A young man called out from within the people milling around with a relieved look on his face. A lot of people around the young man clearly heard him, and they also turned toward Dumbledore, and they seemed to relax as soon as they saw Dumbledore. Albus recognized the young man from the monthly ICW meetings, but much to Albus' shame, he didn't know that man's name, as he didn't think that it would be necessary. "Please, follow me, the others are already waiting for you in the War Council room." The man started to lead him inside without much fanfare, not that Albus was expecting any, especially with Grindelwald and his followers having escaped. Were they able to find anything? Albus asked the man who was leading him to the War Council room, only for the man to shake his head with a sullen look on his face. "I see." Albus muttered. There was supposed to be an emergency Wiesengamot meeting, but Cornelius was forced to call it off with Grindelwald's escape, and even though Grindelwald never attacked Britain directly, there was still some unrest in Britain, thanks to his escape. Albus finally arrived outside the War Council room and the young man left after ushering him inside. Albus entered the room to find the representatives of Austria, Bulgaria, and Germany inside the room along with the head of the International Justice Department. Greetings. Albus greeted them as he approached the table, and the others inside the room greeted him back. How can I help? Albus asked after he took his seat. Violetta Beauvais Wand Shop, November 2, 1994. Harry pushed open the door and entered the dreaded shop. To be honest, he didn't want to be anywhere close to this shop, but he didn't have any other choice. Violetta Beauvais was his best option if he wanted to acquire wands for Gellert and all of his followers. He knew quite a bit about wands, but that didn't mean that he was a wand maker, and Violetta was obviously insane enough to accept the job even after knowing what her job would entail. Harry looked around the shop and realized that Violetta was probably at the back of the shop, so he walked up to the counter and tapped the call bell twice. He heard some noise from the back before a pair of footsteps started to arrive in his direction with some annoyed grumblings. Violetta finally stepped outside from the back while grumbling, and as soon as her eyes landed on Harry, her features softened a bit before a creepy grin appeared on her face. What brings you to my shop, Hadrian Potter, and what happened to your magic? Violetta asked curiously as she stepped out of the counter to take a good look at Harry. My magic is all right. I have decided to mask it all the time as I don't want anyone to learn my secrets with just a look or a simple detection charm, Harry answered as he stopped masking his magic, making Violetta give him a knowing smile. So, is the wand working for you? Any problems? Violetta asked curiously with a hint of not so well concealed excitement in her voice. The wand does feel nice. It sings with my magic, but my output is the same even with any other wand, Harry revealed with a shrug, making Violetta look a bit disappointed, but she decided not to linger on it. I see. So, what brings you to my humble shop? Violetta repeated her initial question. Harry stared at her for a few seconds before he finally decided to speak. I have some associates who are in need of your services, Harry revealed cryptically, making Violetta hum thoughtfully. You know you could have brought them here, Violetta pointed out. I will need an oath of secrecy, Harry declared, and Violetta frowned at that, but after a few moments, she started to grin before she pulled out her wand and decided to swear a secrecy oath. After hashing out the words with Harry, she quickly decided to swear the oath without wasting any more time. The problem is, I couldn't have brought all of my associates here, and then there is the fact that you would have recognized them in an instant regardless of their disguise, Harry answered, and Violetta started to giggle creepily at his words as a look of realization finally dawned on her face. You want me to make wands for Gellert Grindelwald and his followers? Violetta asked while chuckling creepily. I should have known as soon as you entered my shop, Violetta added, losing all traces of amusement from her face. And why the hell should I take this job? He is a mass-murdering Dark Lord and his followers are also mass murderers, Violetta growled. Harry simply smiled at her. I didn't hear a no, Harry pointed out, making Violetta glare at him. Then there is the fact that I am not asking you to match wands for some random nobody. You will be matching Gellert Grindelwald with a wand and his followers too, but that's beside the point, Harry explained, making Violetta narrow her eyes at him. If you think you can convince me with such simple words, then you are absolutely right. Violetta shrieked with a mad glint in her eyes. Hell, I will take the job. He will burn the world with my wand, it would be a beautiful sight to see. Violetta declared before once again she started to laugh creepily. Fair warning, he won't be burning the world as he is working for me, but he will keep reminding everyone why people should be afraid of them from time to time. Harry pointed out, and Violetta seemed to look a bit disappointed at the fact that the world won't be burning, but at least, Grindelwald will be making appearances from time to time. Fair enough, Violetta agreed reluctantly. Though how did you get him to work for you? She asked in a bewildered tone. It wasn't that hard. You see, before he started his movement, he loved researching and learning about different branches of magic. I simply offered him access to magic he never knew existed and he agreed to join me, Harry revealed dismissively before all of a sudden, an idea clicked inside his mind. Is there a way I can recruit you too? Harry asked curiously. I am no fighter, boy, Violetta huffed. Though there are some things you can offer me, so I will think about it, Violetta added thoughtfully. Chapter 134, Preparation they made, 4. Library, Hogwarts. Daphne Greengrass stared at the newspaper in front of her with a conflicted look on her face. Grindelwald never escaped in her world and, to be honest, she didn't even know that Grindelwald was still alive. Almost the whole British wizarding community believed that Grindelwald was killed by Dumbledore after their legendary duel, but much to their surprise, Grindelwald was still alive and kicking. That was the exact reason why there was so much unrest in Britain right now, not that she expected Dumbledore to understand why people were panicking in the first place. Now that she thought about it, Dumbledore never said that he had killed Grindelwald. He always said that he defeated Grindelwald and it was the people who thought that Dumbledore killed Grindelwald, but the man never bothered to correct the misunderstanding. And the last time she checked, not correcting a misunderstanding was not a punishable crime. You know, if you are trying to set that newspaper on fire then it is not working. Daphne was broken out of her musings when someone spoke to her. So, she finally stopped glaring at the newspaper and turned toward the person who spoke to her, only to find herself looking at her closest friend, Tracy Davis. I may not be trying my best yet, Daphne wondered aloud with a hum. Tracy was a good friend, but she wasn't her best friend or anything. Tracy was one of her cousins and unfortunately for Tracy, she was a half-blood, so Daphne had to keep the girl close to her to protect her. It wasn't as bad as it was in the 70s when the war was raging outside Hogwarts, but it was still bad enough that Tracy might get cursed in the hallways if the girl was left to her own devices. Oh. You are trying your best, but it is just not working, Tracy grinned and said in a sing-song voice, and Daphne's eyebrows twitched at the antics of her friend. So, are you worried about Grindelwald? Tracy asked, and Daphne simply gave her friend a "Are you bloody serious" look, instead of answering her. Don't give me that look, Tracy huffed. We have Dumbledore protecting the school, so there is no way Grindelwald will be coming here, Tracy explained like it was the most obvious thing in the world, and Daphne had to agree, there was some truth in there. She didn't know much about Grindelwald, but he couldn't be that stupid, right? Attacking Britain or Hogwarts for that matter with Dumbledore still alive and kicking would be paramount of stupidity. I know, but I can't help but get this feeling that something bad is going to happen, Daphne muttered with a grimace. Yet Tracy agreed with a sullen look on her face. I have heard some seniors talking that another war might break out, Tracy revealed, looking really saddened. By the way, what's up with you, Daffy? Recently I haven't seen you hanging out with Pansy and her group, Tracy asked, trying to change the topic. She didn't want to think about a war right now. Everything is all right. I have simply decided to take an active role to train myself, so I don't get much time to hang out with them, Daphne explained with a shrug. Well, I never thought you would want to become an Auror or something. I always thought that you would be content by being a housewife, Tracy pointed out as she narrowed her eyes at Daphne. Until the start of this year, Daphne always acted like she was a delicate flower and she wanted nothing to do with physical training, but since the start of this year, Daphne had started to train and the changes were quite visible. Tracy and the others had also noticed that Daphne had started to use dark humor and she was always somewhat distant from everyone, so it wasn't a big deal, but Tracy was quite close to Daphne, so she knew for sure that Daphne had changed quite a bit during the holidays. During the holidays I realized that there is no harm in trying to improve myself, Daphne answered defensively, but it was clear that Tracy didn't believe her in the slightest. If you say so. Tracy said unconvincingly, but she decided to drop the matter for the time being. Meanwhile, Daphne was no longer paying attention to Tracy, instead, she was staring at the bushy-haired witch sitting across the room. The Hermione Granger of this world was much different from the Hermione Granger of her world. This Hermione Granger didn't have any friends, and if the girl wasn't bullied in her house then Daphne would eat her shoe. Maybe, I could reach out to her and give her the friendship she needs, Daphne mused as she finally stopped looking at the bushy-haired witch. The Hermione of her world was somewhat of a royal bitch. The Hermione of her world never considered the fact that they might die. The noseless Basta *D killed them and they took the secret of Voldemort's immortality with them to their grave. Hermione could have left a secret message or something like that. They knew that the man could be killed, but they didn't know how. They were simply fighting a pointless war. Alas, it was useless to linger on her past right now. Regardless of Hermione's imperfections, Daphne couldn't deny that Hermione is really intelligent and she could probably have some use for the girl. Daphne decided to keep an eye on the lonely girl for the time being so that she could approach the girl at the right moment. Daphne was about to start paying attention to her homework when her eyes landed on the newspaper, again, reminding her how powerless she was. She knew very well that Dumbledore, Voldemort, and Grindelwald were in a completely different league. If she came across either Voldemort or Grindelwald, then would probably kill her, all of her training and magic be damned. Daphne clutched her hands tightly under the table. She had gained quite some improvements from the ritual she had performed on the night of Hallows Eve, but she wasn't quite satisfied with the results. She knew that she would never reach the level of Dumbledore, Voldemort, or Grindelwald, but she would push her to the limits, and she vowed that she would do her best to stop what happened in her world from happening in this world. She owed this world's Daphne at least that much. Jacqueline's pad. Age how? How are you so young? Violetta stuttered out dumbly while staring at the man standing in front of her. The man looked so young that she could have mistaken him for his son if she didn't know better. She had seen his pictures in the New York Ghost when he had tried to break the statute with the help of an obscurus, and the man looked exactly the same as the pictures. Even though the man wasn't armed, she could feel raw magic radiating from the man even though it was controlled. The credit goes to my new employer. Gellert gestured toward Harry with a smile. He rejuvenated me, Gellert revealed with a smirk, making Violetta gape at him. Rejuvenate? Violetta muttered slowly, looking really absent-minded as her brain mental faculties stopped working. After some time, her mind finally caught up with the fact, and she immediately whirled toward Harry with a mad glint in her eyes. Rejuvenate me and I will swear my loyalty to you right here, right now. Violetta declared hurriedly with her eyes burning with madness. Harry stared at the obviously unhinged woman, trying to decipher if the woman had finally lost all of her marbles. Does rejuvenation hold so much appeal to you? Harry asked curiously, only for Violetta to frantically nod her head. I will have you know that I was a looker back in my days, and I want to have that back, and if I become younger then I will get more time to progress my craft, Violetta quickly explained. A woman does love her looks. You should see, Katerina Gellert mused in an amused tone. All right. If that is what you want, then who am I to complain? Harry shrugged as he decided to accept her. By the way, how long is it going to take you to match them with new wands? Harry asked as he raised his brows at her. I can't match any of them with my wands. All the wands I have in my shop have been registered to MCU, so I will have to craft custom wards for them if I don't want to get in trouble with the MCU, Violetta explained, and Harry nodded his head in understanding. It wasn't an ideal situation, but Harry didn't want to start a war with MCU at this moment. How long will it take you to craft his wand? He is the priority right now, Harry asked, and Violetta seemed to ponder a bit before she finally started to answer. If I have their ingredients at hand, then a few hours at most, but if I don't then I will need longer, Violetta answered. Oh, and since I am joining you, you will only need to pay for the materials. I won't charge for my craftsmanship, Violetta answered with a giggle, making Harry feel a bit giddy on the inside. Maybe, he should raid the New York Guild base as soon as Gellert's wand is ready. Chapter 135, Preparation they made, v. So, what do you think about the wand? Harry asked after Gellert cast a few spells with his new wand. It took Violetta only a few hours to finish Gellert's wand, and from the look on Gellert's face, he was quite satisfied with the wand, but Harry decided to ask him how it felt. After all, Violetta could be seen eagerly waiting for a glowing review. This is good. Much better than my original wand, Gellert answered as he stared at the wand in his hand. Kukiku. I would have been disappointed if you didn't like the wand. Your wand isn't my greatest work by any margin, but it is still one of the wands I am quite proud of, Violetta explained while grinning creepily. 15 blackthorn wood with a phoenix tail feather core, Gellert breathed out with a grin as he continued to stare at the wand. You know wand lore? Violetta asked in surprise as she inclined her head. Yes. I won't claim to be an expert, but I do know my basics, and I recognized the phoenix tail feather during the testing, Gellert explained with a shrug. His original wand was also blackthorn, but he left that unsaid as felt that piece of information to be unnecessary. I see. Well, now, I can't wait to see the great, but terrible things you will achieve with that wand, Violetta laughed creepily, looking somewhat giddy at the prospect of her wand being used to create history, no matter how terrible his actions were going to be. Now that her most immediate task was over, she started to collect her things, so that none of her things would go missing. Let me help you with that, Harry offered as he started to help her put the wooden blocks she had used previously to determine the perfect wand wood for Gellert. The ancient woman smiled at him and allowed him to help. Harry simply waved his hand in the air and all the wooden blocks flew back into the bag placed on the ground. After that, Harry started to help her gather the wand core samples into the bag. After determining the materials most suited for Gellert, Violetta didn't bother to return to her shop and simply asked for an empty room where she could work without anyone observing her. Harry had provided her with such a room so that she could work on her craft without anything bothering her. When all of her stuff was gathered in the bag, Harry closed the bag with a snap of his finger before levitating it in the air with a flick of his wand. I won't be taking that bag with me, Keep that somewhere in here, Violetta hurriedly said to stop Harry from dropping the bag in her hands. She already had another set of testing materials in her shop, so she didn't need to take this with her, especially when she needed to test all of Grindelwald's followers to match them with their wands. All right, Harry nodded his head in understanding and decided to ask Morcy to store the bag somewhere safe. Good. Now, rejuvenate me, Violetta demanded, looking extremely eager. Whoa. Whoa. Calm down. If I rejuvenate right now then people would notice, Harry pointed out, but Violet shrugged her shoulders dismissively. Don't care. I want to be young again, Violetta demanded petulantly, making Harry purse his lips in frustration. Okay, I will rejuvenate you, but you will need to use transfiguration to keep your current appearance, Harry tried to barter, only for Violetta to frantically shake her head with an unhappy look on her face. No, not happening. I want to look young and appealing again. There is no way I am willingly going to make myself look old and wrinkly, Violetta huffed, and Harry simply stared at her, wondering if he made the right call by asking the insane wand maker to join the Lost Garden or not. Then you will have to die for the rest of the world, Harry said as he stared straight into Violetta's eyes. You mean I will have to fake my death? Violetta asked somewhat giddily instead of looking worried or scared. Harry gave her a reluctant nod and the grin on her face became wide. That's a great idea. I always wanted to fake my death, Violetta admitted while nodding her head, making both Gellert and Harry look at each other questioningly. What about your family? Gellert asked curiously. Oh. They will feel bad, but I am sure that they will eventually get over it, Violetta answered dismissively. So, when are we faking my death? Violetta asked eagerly. She couldn't wait to be young again. First of all, you need to get all of your affairs in order, and after that, you would supposedly have a stroke while working in your shop. Is that going to be okay with you? Harry asked, and after pondering for a bit, Violetta nodded her head in agreement. I am old enough to have a stroke and die, Violetta murmured under her breath in agreement. If there is nothing else for me to do then I will be leaving as I have to get my affairs in order, Violetta called out loudly, and after Harry revealed that the rest of her task could wait, Violetta decided to leave. So, Harry quickly opened a portal for her, and as soon as she stepped through the portal, Harry closed it behind her. Harry turned toward Gellert and another portal started to form beside him, but this portal was much smaller than the last one. Harry pulled out a book from the portal and tossed it over to Grindelwald, who caught the book without much difficulty. Gellert looked at the book and gave Harry an annoyed look. Do you know how old this book is? You shouldn't be tossing this book at people, Gellert chastised Harry, who simply waved off the man's concerns. Gellert huffed in annoyance when he realized that Harry wasn't paying any attention to him before he finally cracked open the book only to find that the book was related to black magic, in other words, necromancy. Gellert would admit, the term necromancy wasn't unheard of, but it was a lost branch of magic. Gellert wondered how Harry was able to get his hands on something like this. He had looked for anything on necromancy in his heyday, but he never found anything more than paltry stuff like Emfairy creation and stuff like that. How did you find this? Gellert asked, looking completely shocked. This book must be at least centuries old, and he was sure that Potters are no necromancers, which meant that this was not his family book or anything like that. I have my sources, Harry said cryptically. Harry had read his records, so he knew that Gellert didn't know much about necromancy and he was quite interested in the said subject. Unfortunately, he was never able to find anything more than how to create Emfairy when it came to necromancy. Then there was the fact that he had discovered that he can't resurrect his mom through necromancy as she is not dead in the first place, which made the book kind of useless to him. Now, you need to hold up your end of the deal, Harry reminded Gellert, who simply nodded his head in understanding. So, how are we doing this? Do you have a pensive? Gellert asked, only for Harry to shake his head in denial. All right, I will be lowering my shields, just don't turn me into a mindless slave, Gellert joked. Sure, you don't have to worry about that. Legilimens, Harry said before he entered Gellert's mind so that he could copy all of his experience. Chapter 136, Action is all that left, 4. Apparently, you are going to be missed, Harry said to apparently no one as he continued to read the New York Ghost. I am touched by the things your family said about you, Harry added unsurely as he finally lowered the newspaper to look at the young woman in her early 20s sitting across from him. The woman scoffed derisively even though she didn't stop her work. Those are crocodile tears, my dear. If they aren't falling over themselves to get their filthy paws on my property, then I would eat my shoe, the woman gripped unhappily. Good thing, I didn't leave those foo***curs anything except for my wand shop, and even that is up for consideration," the woman added with a creepy grin. "You are a very wicked woman, Violetta," Harry said dryly, making the woman grin even more widely. Yes, the young woman sitting across from him was the rejuvenated Violetta Beauvais, and Harry could see why the woman wanted to be young again. While there was only one woman in his heart, he had to admit Violetta was a looker. She was probably one of the most sexiest women he had ever laid his eyes upon, and not only that, his mom had been sporting a jealous streak since he rejuvenated Violetta. While Harry found her jealous streak really cute, he wanted to come up with a way to assure her that there was nothing she had to worry about. He was getting tired of her extremely long and descriptive methods of painfully killing a human. "You forgot to mention sexy," Violetta added with a saucy grin, making Harry roll his eyes at her. "Wow, humble much, you old hag," Jacqueline pointed out from the side, only to make Violetta give the younger girl a knowing look before loudly sniffing as she made a face. "I can smell something burning," Violetta said with a wicked grin on her face, and Jacqueline almost jumped over the table to punch that smug bitch on her face. Since she couldn't punch the bitch, Jacqueline decided to deliver a scathing retort, but Harry decided to pitch in before this could develop into a fist fight. "Manners, ladies," Harry chastised the duo softly. "Violetta, how much progress have you made?" Harry asked as he turned toward the wand maker. "I am almost done with the list, and then I will start tallying the list with my stocks," Violetta answered without missing a beat. She had finished testing all of Gellert's followers, and she had come up with a list of materials she would need to craft their wands. She did have a stock of materials she could use, but she knew that she wouldn't be able to craft all the wands with her existing stock. Before faking her death, Violetta had made arrangements for all of her assets, except her wand shop, to be transferred to some sketchy donation organizations, and those organizations had transferred back the assets to a given name after taking a small cut for their services rendered. Violetta would have loved to grab her wand shop too, but she was the MCU contracted wand maker, so she couldn't give away her wand shop to anyone except for her direct family. Unfortunately for her family members, the MCU would always hold power over the shop, so if her family members tried anything, then MCU would simply relieve them of the property, obviously for a predetermined price. Violet Pope, that was the name she had decided to take after her apparent death, and thankfully, she still owned almost all of her assets, which were nothing to scoff at. "Good. In the meantime, I will arrange the funds," Harry declared as he stood up and turned toward Gellert Grindelwald, who was also sitting with them, but he was busy reading the necromancy book Harry gave him 4 days ago. It has been 4 days since Harry acquired Gellert's experience straight from the man's mind, and since then he had been busy incorporating everything he had learned from the man. Harry would have finished incorporating them earlier, but he had his eagles and the exams took up most of his time for the last couple of days. "It is time," Harry declared, and both Gellert and Jacqueline perked up at his words. Gellert knew that he would be accompanying Harry, so he immediately looked up from the book. "Is it time?" Gellert asked, only to receive a nod from Harry. He simply closed his book and stood up. He also wanted to see how his new wand was going to hold in combat. After holding up his end of the deal, he had been continuously working to resharpen his skills. He would admit that he still wasn't up to the mark yet, but he was close, so he was excited about this upcoming fight. He wondered how Albus was going to feel when he would find that he was in his prime again. "What about me?" Jacqueline asked hopefully. "We aren't going to attack right away. We are going to conduct some investigation. I want some of the employees to escape so that they could tell the rest of the guild what transpired there," Harry explained, making Jacqueline incline her head in confusion. "Why? Wouldn't it be better to kill them all?" Jacqueline asked, sounding confused. "My dear, it is not about killing all of them. It is about sending a message," Gellert answered softly in place of Harry. "Though I have a better idea. Instead of letting anyone escape, we can turn them into the message," Gellert suggested, and Harry agreed. The plan was splendid, but there was a slight problem. Gellert was thinking like a Dark Lord, and Harry didn't want to kill everyone without exception, no matter how appealing it sounded. "Hadrian, I believe you should follow his plan," Lily decided to finally pitch in as the idea was quite appealing to her. "No, I won't be killing everyone. That is not how I want to introduce my group to the world," Harry refused without missing a beat. He wanted to be ruthless and brutal, but at the same time, he wanted to come out as somewhat benevolent at the same time. "No, the one who is in charge of this branch will become our message, but if someone escapes, then they have earned their right to live, and I can always kill them on a later date if they try something foolish like revenge," Harry said firmly while staring at Gellert, who simply shrugged. He would have protested, but he had long realized that he was no longer a leader. I will message you before we start the attack, Harry said as he turned to look at Jacqueline, who simply nodded her head in understanding. An investigation was going to be boring and she would be probably bored to death if she decided to accompany them. And, both of you, behave. I will be very displeased if I came to learn that a fist fight broke out between you two. Harry gave both Jacqueline and Violetta a pointed look as he spoke. After that, Harry and Gellert simply disapparated, leaving behind Violetta and Jacqueline alone in the room. With a huff, Jacqueline stood up and decided to make her way to the training room as there was a high chance that a fight might break out if she stayed here. Violetta was bitch with a capital B, but unfortunately, she had her uses. A few hours later. So, what do you think? Harry asked Gellert with an ice cream cone in his hand as he stared at the New York Guild branch building with a disinterested look on his face. They are weak. Gellert trailed off with a straight face. From what I have learned from dear Hymera, the Guild is a new organization, but unfortunately for them, they don't know how the world works, Gellert answered as he took a bite from his ice cream bar. They did have ice cream in his time too, and Gellert would admit that he missed ice cream in Nurmengard. Harry nodded his head in agreement. While the Guild was quite powerful, at least that is what Hymera believed, their strength came from their numbers and their wide reach. Unfortunately for them, that was a boon and a curse at the same time, as they never came to face anyone who could raise a branch of theirs to the ground on their own. Unluckily, both Harry and Gellert were capable of such a feat on their own. Dumbledore and Voldemort were also capable of such a feat, but neither Dumbledore or Voldemort were a threat for obvious reasons. Without anything else to say, Harry sent a message to Jacqueline through her mark, and only after a minute, a portal appeared beside Harry and Jacqueline stepped through the portal. Gellert watched the portal with a curious gleam in his eyes, and since Harry had promised to teach him how to create them, Gellert had an incentive to keep being loyal to Hardy, not that he was planning to betray the boy in the first place. Gellert had long realized that betraying Harry would be a bad way to go. Remember, we are not killing everyone, so if you find a non-combatant, spare them. Do the same for anyone who surrenders, and don't worry, I will be watching your backs, Harry said as he exchanged glances with both Gellert and Jacqueline. The two of them nodded their heads with determined looks on their faces before they finally started to move toward the Guild building. Chapter 137, The Boy Who Struck Back, I. Even though Harry said that he was going to watch their back, it didn't mean that he was going to stay idle. While walking toward the Guild building, Jacqueline quickly transfigured her face to look like someone else as she didn't want to be recognized by the Guild. Harry also transformed his face and his eyes to look like someone else. The Guild will obviously suspect him as they were looking for the person who placed the contract for him, but as long as they wouldn't have anything concrete on him, they wouldn't attack him. At least, that is what Harry was hoping for, and if they did attack him, then good foo * king riddance. While Harry and Jacqueline were using a disguise, Gellert decided to go without one as that is what they were going for. Harry wanted to make the Guild think that it was Gellert Grindelwald who was going after them. He wanted to make them think that Gellert Grindelwald was looking for information in the first place, but when his agent was denied, he decided to escape prison and come after them. Harry was somewhat sure that his plan would work and the Guild would think that Grindelwald was the one looking for the person who issued the contract for Harry Potter's death, and when the peaceful approach failed, he decided to make a move himself, but the mother of idiots was always pregnant, so Harry wasn't completely certain. We are here. Let's get this party started. Jacqueline exclaimed excitedly as they arrived in front of the building. She was ready to rush in with her wand in hand as soon as she finished speaking, but Harry stopped her. You shouldn't rush in like that, Harry said in a disappointed tone as he shook his head. It is good manners to knock first, Harry pointed out as he pointed his hand at the building and cast an exploding curse. The spell struck the entrance of the building, blowing it apart to smithereens while the whole building shook due to the massive explosion. I am foo * king speechless. Jacqueline exclaimed in exasperation as she threw her hands up in the air while Gellert internally decided that Harry was a bit touched in his head, but decided not to say anything as he believed that he was a bit touched in the head too. Looks like they are on their way to greet us, Gellert pointed out instead as he started to walk forward. Harry and Jacqueline simply followed his lead and stepped into the building through the entrance or what was left of it. Moments later, a group of people appeared down at the hall with their wands in their hands, but it was Gellert who struck first. His hand was a blur as he blasted away the whole group within a matter of seconds, and there was no doubt that the whole group was dead. Harry tapped Jacqueline on her shoulder, who was somewhat angry for not getting a kill, and pointed toward the balcony. Moments later, two guys appeared on the balcony and cast a spell at the trio. Harry simply flicked his hand over his head to raise his shield with Gellert following his example, but he achieved the feat with a wand while Jacqueline rolled over on the ground to dodge the spells. As soon as she came to a stop, she aimed her wand at the balcony and cast a blasting hex. The spell struck the balcony and the balcony exploded along with the two grunts standing on it. Their body parts splattered around and Harry threw Jacqueline an annoyed look when a large piece of flesh landed on his shield. The annoyed look was simply ignored by Jacqueline as she was practically vibrating in excitement. Harry simply shook his head and without saying anything else, the three of them started to move again. They finally arrived at the end of the hall and the trio stopped as they came across two paths. One heading to the right while the other heading to the left. "You take the right and we will take the left," Harry declared while looking at Gellert. The man nodded his head in understanding and entered the right path. "You know I can take care of myself," Jacqueline said, sounding somewhat miffed. "I know, but I don't want you to make a mistake when you lose yourself in a fight." Harry explained his reasons and Jacqueline wanted to argue, but she froze when Harry grabbed her and yanked her back by the back of her robes only for a blade to struck where Jacqueline was standing previously. "I know you are there," Harry called and the hall in front of them shimmered, transforming into a large room. Harry had long realized that there was an illusion placed at the end of the hall, but he wanted to see if Jacqueline would notice the illusion or not. She didn't, which made Harry realize that Jacqueline needed a bit more training before he could let her act on her own. "You are that bitch who killed my men." The man standing at the center snarled and the man wasn't alone. The man had 5 grunts standing right behind him with their wands held out. "Lost Garden or whoever you people are, you are foo asterisk ked." The man continued as he glared venomously at Harry. "The way you are strutting around, you must be the leader of the branch," Harry stated calmly, but there was clear amusement in his eyes. "So, what is your name?" Harry asked even though he knew that he wouldn't be receiving an answer. "I don't need to tell you anything as the two of you are going to be dead." The man spat out and flicked his wand sideways and the hall behind them was sealed. "Attacking us in broad daylight. I will make an foo asterisk king example of you people," the man growled and raised his wand to cast, but one of the grunts stepped forward and whispered something at the man's ear. Harry's eyes narrowed at the sight. The grunt looked unassuming, but there was always a chance that the leader was simply posing to be a leader, with the real leader hiding on the sidelines. The way the look on the man posing as the leader changed, he decided not to dismiss the idea, but moments later, he realized that it didn't matter. They were going to die all the same. The man finally turned back toward them with a lecherous grin on his face. "Hand the bitch over to us and we will let why." Before he could finish what he wanted to say, he was cut off by Harry when his other arm plopped down on the ground and a bit of blood splattered on his cheek when the grunt standing behind was chopped into pieces. For the next few seconds, there was an overbearing silence as nobody could understand what happened until the pain finally kicked in. The leader dropped his wand and dropped to his knees while clutching the spot where his arm used to be while screaming like a little bitch. "Kaya!" The man screamed while one of the grunts started to empty his stomach when he noticed the fate of his fellow grunt. "You can kill those useless morons," Harry pointed at the grunts dismissively. The way the grunts were looking at each other was proof enough that none of them were shadow leaders or anything. They were simply horny foo asterisk curs. Gladly Jacqueline grinned fearfully as she stepped forward and by then, the leader was finally able to regain some of his bearings and scream at the grunts to kill Harry and Jacqueline. One of the grunts fired a spell at Harry, but Harry simply batted away the spell with a bored look on his face. "I am your opponent, you foo asterisk curs." Jacqueline screamed as she started to relentlessly rain down spells at the 4 surviving grunts. It seemed that she wasn't happy over the fact that one of her targets decided to ignore her and cast a spell at Harry. Meanwhile, Harry simply raised his hand and the still kneeling leader came sliding toward him. The leader gaped at Harry. It wasn't every day that he got to witness wandless magic. Until now, he didn't even know how he lost his arm as everything happened so quickly, but now he was sure. "While she deals with your underlings, let's have a small chat," Harry declared as he stared down at the man kneeling in front of him. "Who are you?" The man breathed out tiredly. He was looking somewhat pale thanks to all the blood he had lost, but Harry was certain that some of his paleness was due to fear. "Do you have any idea what you have done?" the man asked, hoping to intimidate Harry into sparing him. "Yes, I have declared war against the guild, and as for my name, I believe you said I don't need to tell you anything as the two of you are going to be dead, now let me repeat it for you." "I don't need to tell you anything as you are going to be dead," Harry stated as a matter of fact. "At least tell me why? What is the connection between Harry Potter and your group?" the man asked, trying to fish for information. "Unfortunately for you, you will never know," Harry grinned viciously as his eyes started to glow. Without wasting any more time, he ripped into the man's mind. The man screamed, but his screams went ignored as his last living grunt was on his last leg while the rest of his grunts were lying on the floor in pieces. After a couple of minutes, Harry was finally done, so he retreated from the man's mind. He looked pleased with himself as he was able to learn quite a few things about this so-called guild. Harry raised his hand and cast a cutting curse, beheading the man in a fell swoop. Harry turned toward Jacqueline, who seemed to be playing around with the last grunt. "Kill him," Harry called, and moments later, Jacqueline split the man apart diagonally with a flame whip. Harry didn't miss the fact that Jacqueline was practically glowing. "You look like you had a lot of fun," Harry pointed out, and Jacqueline beamed at him. Yes, I did," Jacqueline agreed cheerfully. Though Harry realized that there was probably more to that, and that was not something he wanted to know. Alas, his was cursed with beyond genius-level intelligence. Maybe he should skip asking her if she enjoyed a killing spree or not the next time. Yes, he was going to do that from now on, Harry decided internally, ignoring his mom's howling laughter in the background. Chapter 138, Know Thy Enemy, I. Little Hangleton, England, an hour ago. Hymera arrived at the edge of a small village named Little Hangleton with a loud crack, but fortunately, there was nobody around her to notice her arrival. It took her some asking around to find where the Gaunts lived when they were still alive. Hymera discovered that the Gaunts weren't liked much and they were paupers too. That was probably why they were living in a backward shithole like this. Thankfully, Little Hangleton wasn't that big, so only after a few minutes, Hymera found someone old enough to remember the Gaunts. At first, the old man frowned at her when she asked him about the Gaunts, but he still pointed her toward the Gaunt house before telling her to be careful. She trekked down the dirt road, but then all of a sudden she was blasted away as she came in contact with something solid. Hymera's world drowned in pain as her whole body was set alight. She screeched in pain, but this was not the first time she was set on flames, so she didn't lose all of her bearings and started to roll on the dirt ground, trying to put off the flames. The flames were so potent that it took her a whole minute to put off the flames. While breathing heavily, she rolled over onto her back. Hymera snarled in rage as she tore off her charred robes. She was also somewhat charged, but she was already healing. She slowly stood up and started to curse as she continued to tear off her clothes until she was completely naked. All of her clothes were ruined, and instead of protecting her dignity, they were only slowing down her healing factor, so she was forced to take them off. Hymera! How can you be so king stupid? Hymera snarled at herself as she started to conjure herself some clothes. Her conjured clothes would at least last for a couple of hours, and Hymera was sure that in a couple of hours, she would be done. After getting dressed, Hymera returned to the spot from where she had been blasted off. She didn't need to be a genius to know what she had done. She had foolishly triggered a lethal ward. To be honest, she wasn't expecting the place to be protected by a ward like this. Who would? After all, it has been decades since the Gaunts died off. The wards should have disappeared long ago, especially with no one there to charge the wards. Hymera decided to poke around a bit, but this time a bit more carefully, but this time she didn't dare to get anywhere close to the ward that set her on fire. She could probably heal from it again, but she wasn't a masochist. After inspecting the ward for the next half an hour from a safe distance, Hymera finally came to the startling realization. She realized that the ward was simply beyond her. With no other choice, she simply used her mark to send a message to Harry and decided to wait for him to arrive at his own leisure. She approached one of the trees and plopped down under the shade as she leaned back on the tree. Guild Branch, New York. I found their treasury, Gellert declared as he reunited with Harry and Jacqueline. Harry immediately perked up at the words. How big is this treasury? Harry asked in an excited tone, making Jacqueline practically roll her eyes at him. I am not sure, but at least 100,000 galleons, Gellert answered after thinking for a bit. Oh. Then as dutiful citizens of a magical community, we shouldn't leave such an amount to be lying around. We should put it to good use so that the gold is kept in circulation, Harry admitted righteously, making Jacqueline scoff at his words. He wasn't fooling anyone with his words. Meanwhile, Gellert didn't know what to think. Then all of a sudden, the look on Harry's face changed. The cheerful look on his face morphed into a constipated look. What happened? Jacqueline asked, sounding worried. Hymera needs my help, Harry answered after a few moments of silence. Then go, help her, Jacqueline said like it was the most obvious thing to do, but Harry looked even more constipated after hearing her words. What about the gold? Harry asked. 100,000 galleons. This was the first time he was going to see such a huge amount of gold in one place. I will get the Fu *King gold. Go and help her. Jacqueline explained as she threw her arms up in the air in exasperation. Harry still looked somewhat reluctant as he knew that Hymera was really durable and she could heal from practically anything. Are you sure? Harry asked, looking concerned. Fu *K, yes. I am sure. I will get the gold and I promise I won't leave behind anything, Jacqueline assured Harry with a huff as she scowled at him. All right. Harry said as he gave her a stiff nod before finally turning toward Gellert. I leave the message up to you, Harry said, and Gellert nodded his head in understanding. He already had an idea. He decided to brand the head of the leader with the sigil of the lost and leave a letter near the head. After that, Harry simply bid them farewell and opened a portal. On the other side of the portal, there was a dirt road and Harry had no idea why Hymera was calling him to a random nowhere. He simply shrugged before he finally stepped through the portal. The portal closed behind him and after looking around, he found Hymera sitting under a tree. The said woman didn't miss his arrival and immediately rose up to her feet while dusting her hands. So, why are we here? Harry asked unsurely as he gestured to their surroundings. I tracked the Gaunts to this place, but there are active wards, Hymera answered, making Harry raise his eyebrows at her. Really? I thought the Gaunts were gone, Harry asked curiously. Yes, they are. Marvelo Gaunt died in 1927 after he was released from Azkaban. He was sent there for assaulting a ministry personnel, Hymera explained. He had 2 children, Morphin Gaunt, and a daughter, but I wasn't able to find much about the daughter, Hymera added. What happened to Morphin? Harry asked as he inclined his head. Morphin was sent to Azkaban along with his father, Marvelo, for attacking the ministry personnel, but his stint in the prison was longer than his father's as he initially broke the law by cursing a Muggle. Later he was sent back to Azkaban for life in 1943 when he murdered a Muggle family. He died in Azkaban a few months ago, Hymera explained, and Harry hummed thoughtfully as he rubbed his chin. I see. What about the daughter? Harry asked. Nobody knows. Apparently, she was a squib and the Gaunts were extreme bigots, so I wouldn't be surprised if they killed her in a fit of anger and threw her body in a gutter, Hymera answered with a shrug. Oh well. Harry mumbled as he decided to change the topic. So, the wards? Harry asked and Hymera simply pointed toward the dirt road before she started to speak. This is where I triggered the wards, and tell you what, if it was anyone besides me, then they would be dead, Hymera deadpanned. Is that so? Harry asked in an amused tone. So, what happened to you? Harry asked as he started to approach the ward line. He waved his hand in the air and the air flickered in front of him before turning back to normal. Someone had placed very powerful wards around this place, but why would someone place such wards in a place like this? Well, unless they were hiding something important in here. I was set on fire and it was not pleasant, Hymera muttered unhappily in a low tone. Indeed, Harry drawled as he raised his hand and the ward was struck by a lightning bolt from Harry's hand. The ward trembled but held strong, so Harry simply decided to increase the power. Another lightning bolt struck the ward and this time, the ward shuddered and started to flicker before it finally buckled under the overwhelming pressure. The Gaunts were probably nutters, Harry declared when he finally saw the Gaunt shack. When he finally brought down the ward, the Gaunt shack finally came into view as the area obscuring ward was tied in with the other wards. There was a dead snake nailed to the door of the shack and that was proof enough that the Gaunts were nuts. Yes, that aligns with what I heard about them, Hymera agreed. Meanwhile, Harry waved his hand in the air to check if there was another ward or not. The way this place was warded, he wouldn't be surprised if there were any more surprises waiting for them, but there were no more wards, which raised some flags in Harry's mind, but he still decided to step forward and he immediately discovered why there weren't any more wards. Motherfu *Ker. Hymera explained as she stared in horror at the abomination right in front of them. What in the name of Motherfu *Kering devil is that? Hymera asked in a horrified tone. She had seen a lot of horrible things, but she had never seen something as horrible as this. Not exactly, Harry said as he inclined his head. I believe this is a nercomatic construct, but very horribly executed, Harry deduced as he continued to stare at the abomination in front of them, and then the abomination finally roared. Chapter 139, Know Thy Enemy, 2. A hulking mass of flesh, bones, muscles, and gore towered over Harry and Hymera. The two of them could still see human faces and various limbs strewn across the whole mass. The mass started to take the form of a massive serpent, but it still retained all faces, limbs, bones, and gore around its body. They started to wonder how many people had to be killed to create this sort of monstrosity. Well, this is something only the Dark Lord would create, wouldn't you agree? Harry glanced at Hymera from the corner of his eyes and asked in an amused tone. The titanic flesh serpent reeled back so that it could strike Harry and Hymera just like a real serpent would, but a semi-transparent green wall appeared in front of the flesh serpent, stopping it in its tracks. The serpent hissed in indignation as it balefully glared at Harry, or that is what he believed the serpent was doing. The serpent quickly moved around the barrier and Harry had to admit that the serpent was really fast for its size. Another semi-transparent green wall appeared in the path of the snake before it could even prepare to strike. The snake hissed and raised its head in the air and spat out some sort of liquid from its mouth, but another green semi-transparent wall appeared in the path of the liquid harmlessly splashed against the wall before the liquid rained down on the serpent. The serpent howled in pain as the liquid splashed on its body. The liquid started to melt off the flesh from the serpent's body, proving that the liquid was some kind of strong acid. The serpent finally stopped flailing around with its flesh still smoking thanks to the acid, but the serpent was still alive and kicking. Harry could have easily killed the snake, but he decided to play with it as he wanted to see what the construct could do, but all of his plans came to a screeching halt when Hymera started to speak. Can you kill it quickly and put them out of their misery? Hymera asked, looking somewhat uncomfortable. She wasn't as intelligent as Harry, but she knew what the serpent was made of. After living through the horrors Hydra forced upon her, she knew how horrible the world could be, but nobody deserved to die like this. She couldn't help but draw a connection between herself and these people. Harry stared at her for the next few moments before nodding his head in understanding. He wanted to understand why she was asking something like that, but it only took him a few moments to connect the dots. He pointed his hand toward the serpent and the walls surrounding the serpent disappeared and extremely hot flames poured out of Harry's hand. The flames transformed into a massive chimera before it finally engulfed the flesh serpent. The flesh serpent hissed and trashed around, but only after a few seconds, the flesh serpent was no longer thrashing around or hissing in pain. The flames started to subside and tried to fight against Harry's control, but there was no way Harry would lose control over his own spell. Thanks. Hymera decided to thank Harry. It is all right. Harry quickly waved his hand to dismiss her concerns. So, do you think we are heading toward the lair of a Dark Lord? Harry asked. I don't know, Hymera answered after pondering the question for a bit. I am not sure if a Dark Lord would ever live in a place like this. Hymera pointed at the rundown shack and Harry agreed with the point. Then again, who knows? After all, Voldemort might be trying to lay low, Hymera added with an unsure look on her face, but Harry was sure that Hymera was wrong on the latter part. There was no way that Voldemort would ever hide in a shithole like this. His ego would never allow that, but there was definitely something up with this place, or why else would someone want to protect a shack like this? Harry stared at the charred ground in front of him, not even ashes of the construct were left. Fiend fire always tends to do that. Harry felt that the necromantic construct was a complete waste, as Voldemort could have used something else, like blood wards, to protect the place. Maybe, Voldemort was going for something scary and grotesque. Let's see what's so special about this shack, Harry declared as he started to head toward the shack. The ground under his feet cracked as some of the dust had been turned into glass thanks to the extreme heat. Harry arrived in front of the door with Hymera trailing behind him. He raised his hand to push the door open, but he stopped. Moments later, he simply waved his hand, and the walls of the shack rippled before returning to normal. There are more wards. I wonder what he is protecting, Harry wondered aloud, and Hymera simply decided to wait for Harry to deal with it. Interesting. Harry trailed off with a grin as he rubbed his chin. What's interesting? Hymera asked curiously. This is one of the strongest, but at the same time, the weakest ward I have ever come across, Harry explained, making Hymera frown. She opened her mouth to ask Harry how it was possible, but Harry started to speak before she could say anything. You see, Voldemort is a Parselmouth, and only a Parselmouth can deactivate this ward, Harry added. Then what are we going to do? Hymera asked while frowning. Well, Harry could always bring down the wards with overwhelming force, so there was always that. There is nothing to worry about, after all, Voldemort isn't the only Parselmouth, Harry declared with a grin. Now, I only need to figure out what someone like Voldemort would use as his password, Harry added, surprising Hymera. She didn't know that Harry was Parselmouth just like Voldemort. She started to wonder how the light side would feel if Harry ever revealed this skill to the wider wizarding world. Then she realized that the dark side would be falling over themselves too if Harry ever revealed the fact that he is a parcel mouth. Open Harry hissed, but nothing happened. Well, that didn't work, Harry mused internally before he decided to try something else. I am Lord Voldemort, Harry hissed, and once again, nothing happened. With how much of an egomaniac Voldemort was, Harry expected this to work, but oh well. There were still some he wanted to try before ripping the ward apart with his bare hands, as he didn't know what would happen if used force to break the wards. Well, third time is the charm, Harry mused when he finally came up with a third prospective password. It is me, Lord Voldemort, Harry hissed, and this time the invisible barrier in front of the door shimmered before disappearing. Eureka! Harry exclaimed before snapping his fingers as he blew apart the door. When nothing happened, he nodded his head in satisfaction and stepped inside the house. After some hesitation, Hymera also stepped inside the house. Not that she was worried much, as it was extremely difficult to kill her. Look around to see if you find anything, but don't touch shit. It might be cursed, and even with your healing factor, you will be ked from 9 ways to Sunday, Harry warned her, and Hymera decided to take that warning to heart. She saw the monstrosity outside, so she knew what Voldemort was capable of, and she believed that the man was beyond her leave, just like Harry and Grindelwald were. After that, the two of them started to look around the house, but after looking around for 10 minutes, they weren't able to find anything except for a big load of nothing. It doesn't make any sense. Why would Voldemort protect this place if he wasn't protecting something? Lily wondered aloud, sounding really frustrated. Yeah, I know, right, Harry agreed with her drily. It also didn't make any sense to him. Maybe he wanted to hide something here, but for whatever reason, he never followed through with his intention, Lily suggested thoughtfully. No. He went through with it. I am sure of that, or he wouldn't have gone to such lengths to protect this place, Harry declared. He was sure that there was something important hidden here, but where? He looked everywhere, except for inside the walls and under the floor. He froze when he realized that he never looked under the floor. Yes, he never looked inside the walls, but the walls were thin, and even with the wards, the house was barely standing and the walls would come down if the shack ever got toppled, so the walls were not an ideal place to hide something important, but under the floor was the perfect place to hide something very important. With a wave of his hand, Harry ripped apart the floor, surprising Hymera, who jumped back to avoid the flying floor. K. Warn a girl before doing something like that. Hymera snapped instinctively, and she immediately wanted to apologize to Harry, but he beat her to that. Sorry. Harry apologized absent-mindedly, and Hymera noticed that he was no longer paying any attention to her. So, she turned toward where he was looking and found him staring at a golden box. She had no idea what was inside the box, so she was quite interested to see what was inside the box. She wanted to know why someone would go to such lengths to protect this place. Harry levitated the box with a wave of his hand and then opened it using magic, revealing a Chapter 140, Know Thy Enemy, 3. Harry levitated the box with a wave of his hand and then opened it using magic, revealing a gold ring with a large black stone set in the middle. His gaze lingered on the stone and his eyes grew wide in surprise when he recognized the mark inscribed on the stone. It was the Peveril coat of arms. In other words, the sign of Deathly Hallows. To be honest, he couldn't believe his luck. He was trying to look into Voldemort's origin, and then not only did he stumble over something important to Voldemort, but he also stumbled on a freaking Deathly Hallow. Well, right now, he wasn't sure if this was the real Resurrection Stone or not, but he was mostly certain that this was the real deal. After some pondering, Harry realized that Voldemort didn't even know that the stone was the Resurrection Stone, or he wouldn't have squirreled away something like this in here. If Voldemort knew what he had in his possession, then he would have worn it proudly. That was the type of person Voldemort really was. So, he must have some other reason to hide the ring in a place like this. Then all of a sudden, his hand snapped upward and grabbed Hymera's hand, which was reaching out toward the ring. Harry slowly turned toward Hymera, only to find that she was caught in the compulsion. Harry could feel the compulsion brush against his occlumency barriers, and he had to admit that compulsion charm was probably the strongest he had ever felt, so he couldn't blame Hymera for losing herself. Harry raised his other hand and flicked her forehead, breaking her out of the trance. She blinked in confusion before she met Harry's eyes. I was going to grab the ring, but I don't know why. It seemed the right thing to do. Hymera mumbled, looking extremely confused as she rubbed her temples. Are you still feeling like that? Harry asked while giving her an understanding look. Himera admitted after thinking for a bit. Thanks for stopping me. By the way, Himera thanked Harry when she finally remembered that Harry had stopped her from grabbing the ring. You are most welcome. Even I am not going to touch the ring before I am completely sure that the ring is completely safe. Though I am certain that there is something nasty on that ring, especially with such a strong compulsion charm making you want to grab the ring, Harry said while he used his magic to close the box, and the compulsion finally stopped. Let's leave. There might be some other traps, Harry said as he grabbed the box with one hand and started to open a portal with another. He had some other things to do in Britain, but before that, he wanted to inspect the ring. There was something important about the ring except for the fact that it contained the resurrection stone. The portal stabilized and both Harry and Himera stepped through the portal without wasting any time. After a couple of minutes they left, the wards collapsed on itself, collapsing the shack. Jacqueline's pad. After returning to Jacqueline's house, Harry told Himera to take a break while he decided to meet Gellert as he had some things to discuss with the man. Harry arrived outside one of the biggest tents. He could sense Gellert inside this tent through the sigil of the lost. The flaps moved away on their own as Harry entered the tent and he immediately started to make his way toward the main hall. Currently, they have been using the main hall as their meeting room, so Harry wasn't surprised to find that Gellert wasn't alone. He was discussing something with Katarina, who has taken the role of his right-hand woman. There were a few more people around the two of them including Jacqueline, and even though Harry knew all of their names, none of them were important to him. What's up? Did you finally decide on a location? Harry announced his arrival and everyone in the room turned toward him. He knew that Gellert and his followers were searching for a location for their permanent base, but they haven't been able to find a suitable location until now, and with the world map still laid on the table, he knew that they were looking for a suitable location. Yes, we did, we are just discussing that, but you have the final say, Gellert answered as he gestured toward the map. Where is Himera? Is she okay? Jacqueline decided to cut into their conversation. She is all right. I have told her to rest, Harry answered her before turning back toward Gellert. He finally arrived in front of the table. Show me, Harry ordered, and Katarina placed her finger on the map. This is Rubek. A small country near Svalbard, Norway. Rubek is a poor country, surrounded from all sides by the sea. Their only source of income is farming and fishing, Katarina explained, and Harry was quite intrigued by what he heard. A/N, I decided to go with an O country as I didn't want to show a real country in low light or take over any real country even for a fanfic. I know that there are a lot of OG countries in Marvel like Genosha or Sokovia, but I will leave them for exploration at a later date. Magical presence? Harry asked as he wanted to know if there was already an established magical community in Rubek. Then they would need to take over that community before establishing any sort of communication with the Muggles. After all, he didn't want anyone contacting the ICW as the ICW took the matter of statute very seriously. Zero magical presence, Katarina revealed with a grin as she could guess what Harry was thinking about. We could simply establish our presence without any opposition, Katarina added, and Harry hummed thoughtfully at her words. What about the Muggles? Are they going to be a problem for you guys? Harry asked as he furrowed his brows. Harry didn't have any problems with Muggles joining Lost Garden, but with Gellert and his followers being in Lost Garden, there might be a problem. Katarina frowned at his question before turning toward Gellert, who realized that it was his cue to start speaking. I don't like Muggles, none of my followers do, but we have given up our cause long ago, so remember, I am no longer a leader. Gellert explained, somewhat bitterly. Muggles might be useful as it would make your group more versatile, he added thoughtfully while ignoring the sour feeling. What about the rest of your followers? Harry pressed as he knew that there might be some members who are going to be quite displeased with the whole situation. They will follow your orders if they know what is good for them, Gellert declared firmly. Okay, Harry nodded his head in understanding. He will deal with it if it becomes necessary. So, what do you think? Is it possible to establish any sort of connection with them? Harry asked as he looked around at everyone except for Jacqueline. Katarina seemed to ponder for a bit before turning toward one of the men standing on her right. Harry recognized that man as Isaac Hansen. The man gulped when he noticed that everyone was looking at him. I am from Svalbard and I know that the people from Rubek are desperate for resources. They would accept help from practically anyone, the man explained, somewhat nervously. He only returned from Svalbard today and then he told me about Rubek, Katarina added helpfully, making Harry nod in understanding. I see. Harry trailed off before his gaze focused on Katarina. After you get your wand, take some members with you to Rubeck and check the place," Harry ordered, and Katerina nodded her head in understanding. There were two reasons why he decided to send Katerina and some of Gellert's followers instead of going himself. First of all, he had too much on his plate, and secondly, he wanted to see if they would play nice with the Muggles or not without any supervision from himself or Gellert. He wouldn't be there with them, but if any of them tried to harm the Muggles, he would know. "Gellert, please follow me. There is something I may need your help with," Harry declared as he turned toward Gellert. A portal started to open beside Harry, leading to Jacqueline's front yard. Taking the cue, Jacqueline also stood up, and she was the first one to enter the portal as soon as the portal stabilized, and soon, Harry and Gellert also followed her example. Harry knew that he could deduce the secrets of the ring on his own, but he still decided to ask for Gellert's help as genuine wisdom was hard to come by. "Jackie, this is going to be dangerous, so can you give us some privacy?" Harry asked, and even though Jacqueline started to pout, she excused herself. As soon as she was gone, Harry pulled out the golden box from his robes and held it in front of Gellert. "There is a strong compulsion charm, so get ready," Harry declared, and Gellert nodded his head before Harry finally opened the box, revealing the ring and the resurrection stone, and from the look on Gellert's face, Harry was certain that he also recognized the Deathly Hallow set within the golden ring. Chapter 141, Know Thy Friends, I. "Is that the resurrection stone?" Gellert asked in disbelief as he stared at the black stone set in the golden ring. He could feel a compulsion pressing on his mind, telling him to grab the ring and put him on his finger, but his occlumency was strong enough to ignore the compulsion, and Harry's warning obviously helped. "Or it is probably the most convincing replica," Harry pointed out, but neither of them believed that. Gellert had done a lot of research on the Deathly Hallows, and he had looked for the resurrection stone for years. There was no way that Gellert would fail to recognize the real thing, and since Harry had acquired Gellert's experience and knowledge, he also knew everything Gellert knew. Though someone had clearly dared to desecrate such an artifact, Gellert growled as he pulled out his wand and pointed it at the ring. After casting only a few spells, Gellert already knew what they were dealing with here. "This is a Horcrux," Gellert breathed out in complete disbelief. "A Horcrux?" Harry asked thoughtfully. It was a Fu*King Horcrux. It made so much sense. He knew what a Horcrux was, thanks to Gellert's knowledge and the Ancient One's records of Herpo the Foul. So, while he could have confirmed the fact on his own, he wanted Gellert to be there, just to be sure. There were only a few things a man like Voldemort would try to protect with such aggression, and Harry was almost certain that Voldemort didn't know that he had the Resurrection Stone in his possession. From the Ancient One's records, Harry knew that Voldemort was obsessed with immortality, and there weren't many ways to become immortal. A Deathly Hallow. "Hadrian, you finally have a Deathly Hallow in your grasp, and now we also know how Voldemort survived," Lily gushed out excitedly. "We can't be sure yet," Harry reminded her, and Lily simply scoffed at his words. "Please, Hadrian. Just accept the fact that you have the Resurrection Stone in your grasp," Lily pressed. "Not only that, we finally know how to kill Voldemort," Lily added. "I don't disagree with you on the latter part, but I don't think this is the only Horcrux he made. A man like him won't be satisfied with only one fail-safe. Voldemort believes himself to be above everyone else, so he would have knowingly forced himself too far to prove that he was better than everyone else," Harry explained thoughtfully. "Herpo the Foul was the one who came up with the idea of splitting his soul and putting it inside an inanimate object to anchor his soul to the physical plane. Was the first person ever to create a Horcrux. Had also mentioned that he felt losing a part of himself after splitting his soul, and hence he refrained from creating another Horcrux. He was sure that Voldemort would have tried to make more than one just so he could prove that he was better than Herpo the Foul. There is also a curse on the ring for protection. I am sure that the curse is from Jamaica, but I don't recognize this specific curse," Gellert revealed, breaking Harry out of his musings. "Voodoo magic?" Harry asked when he heard Gellert mention that country. Jamaica was famous for voodoo magic, but no matter how it sounded, voodoo magic was real and scary as Fu*K. Gellert nodded his head in agreement. "Where did you find this thing?" Gellert asked curiously as he marveled at the Resurrection Stone from a safe distance, as there was no way he was going anywhere close to the damn ring as long as it carried the voodoo curse. He didn't want to end up as a rotten mummy. "This ring belonged to Gaunts. All the Gaunts are gone except for Voldemort, and when the ring came into his possession, he turned the ring into a Horcrux," Harry explained without missing a beat. "He didn't even know what he had in his possession, did he?" Gellert asked, but it was clearly a rhetorical question. "No. He didn't," Harry confirmed. "By the way, thank you for the time, I have another visit to make," Harry said as he closed the box before grabbing it. Gellert seemed to be a bit put off by Harry's words. Can I have the stone for testing? Gellert asked. He was obsessed with the Deathly Hallows. He never cared much about the Cloak of Invisibility or the Master of Death title, but he really wanted the Resurrection Stone as he believed that he could use the Resurrection Stone to create a true undying army. You may, but after I have dealt with the Horcrux, Harry answered smoothly, and that was already much better than Gellert was expecting, so he simply gave Harry an understanding nod before Harry opened a portal for him. Gellert gave him a respectful nod before stepping through the portal. What are you planning to do? Lily asked, looking somewhat confused. I have some questions for the Ancient One, Harry answered before opening a portal leading to Camartage. Harry stepped through the portal and found himself standing outside the Ancient One's house. Harry entered the house only to hear some screams from inside the house. It seemed that Caecilius was having another argument with the Ancient One. Well, it was Caecilius who was screaming at the Ancient One for whatever reason. Harry did have some ideas about Caecilius' reasons, but it was none of his business, and his reasons were somewhat similar to his own, so Harry didn't have any leg to stand on. Harry finally arrived outside her room, and before he could knock or announce his arrival, the Ancient One told him to enter. He was used to her antics, so he simply slid the door open and entered the room. Just foo! King Great Harry internally scowled when he saw that Mordo was also there. Greetings, teacher, Harry respectively greeted the woman he came to meet while ignoring both Caecilius and Mordo. Are you guys in the middle of something? I can always come back later. Harry asked curiously as he glanced toward Caecilius and Mordo, with the latter sneering at Harry. It is all right. They were leaving. The Ancient One gestured Harry to take a seat, making Mordo scowl at Harry. Caecilius seemed to glare at the Ancient One for a bit before finally turning back toward Harry. It is nice to see you again, Harry. Please excuse me, Caecilius declared before he finally walked out of the room without saying anything else to the Ancient One. I will also be excusing myself, Mordo said dispassionately before walking out of the room. Tea. The Ancient One offered Harry like everything was normal and peachy. No, I am all right, but I wouldn't say no to some chips, Harry said with a grin, making the Ancient One give him a dirty look. Unfortunately, it seems that this is my last pack, the Ancient One answered primly, and Harry knew that it was a bald-faced lie. There was no way it was her last packet. She always kept a massive stock. So, you finally found one of the three? The Ancient One asked, and Harry simply nodded his head before he pulled out the box and placed it on the table. There was no use in hiding anything from her since she already knew. You redacted his name from the records because it plays a part in his defeat, doesn't it? Harry asked, only for the Ancient One to hum in agreement as she picked up the box. Harry wasn't worried about her giving in to the compulsion. She slowly opened the box and stared at the ring with a hint of distaste on her face. Such an amazing artifact, but sullied by a madman, the Ancient One declared before closing the box with a snap. So, what brings you here, Harry? The Ancient One asked as she took a sip from her cup. Don't you already know? Harry asked curiously. The Ancient One nodded her head. I do, but I can't answer your questions for you if you don't ask them, the Ancient One retorted with a smile. Harry stared at her for the next few moments before finally giving in. Is there a way I can use the Horcrux to track his other Horcruxes? Harry asked as he tapped on the box. A trick question, the Ancient One declared with a grin on her face. You have suspicions that this isn't his only Horcrux, and my answer will confirm your suspicions, the Ancient One explained, and Harry didn't bother to defend himself as it was true. Very smart of you, Hadrian, the Ancient One nodded her head in appreciation. Unfortunately, the answer is no. I do not know a way to use this Horcrux or this piece of his soul to track the other Horcruxes or the other pieces of his soul, the Ancient One answered with a sigh. I do know where the others are, but I cannot direct you toward them. That is not my job, the Ancient One answered while staring at Harry carefully, watching his reactions. I see. You said that you don't know a way to use this Horcrux to track the others, right? So, there is a possibility that someone else might know, right? Harry asked cryptically. There would be nothing to gain by being angry at her, and he couldn't have her holding his hand all the time. The Ancient One frowned at the question. She seemed to ponder a bit before she finally decided to answer his question. Maybe. Maybe not. Harry. Hadrian, you have to understand that soul magic is extremely dangerous. I am 6 centuries old and still, there is very little I know about soul magic, the Ancient One explained. Harry wasn't expecting her to say something like that, but he understood why she said that. She wanted him to be careful while dabbling with soul magic. Thank you, Harry gave her a grateful look. The Ancient One smiled at him. Harry, there is something I wanted to ask you, the Ancient One said, and Harry simply gestured her to continue. What would you do if I died? The Ancient One asked, completely surprising Harry by the question. Chapter 142, Know Thy Friends, 2. Harry narrowed his eyes at the Ancient One, watching her intently. Is that a trick question? Harry asked, as he couldn't fathom why she was suddenly asking him what he would do if she died. With her precognition, she would be able to see her death coming a mile away, which makes it possible for her to evade her death very easily, unless her death is unavoidable. No. Not a trick question, the Ancient One quickly denied. I am simply curious, the Ancient One clarified. You have seen your own death and it is unavoidable, Harry stated with a nod of his head. It wasn't a question and the Ancient One knew that. Yes, but my death is not unavoidable per se. Unfortunately, I have lived quite a long life and I see no reason to prolong it anymore, especially when I would have found someone worthy enough to carry my torch, the Ancient One answered softly. You have accepted your death, Harry pointed out, and the Ancient One nodded her head in agreement. That is why I am asking, what would you do if I died? The Ancient One repeated her question. We haven't known each other for that long, but you are still my teacher, and I have learned a lot from you, so I will obviously try to save you, but if I failed to do that, then I will be sure to avenge you, Harry answered calmly, as that was exactly what he would do. So, have you already found a successor? Harry asked curiously. I hope it is not Caecilius or Mordo, Harry chuckled, with the Ancient One following his example. Neither of them are fit for the responsibility. The Ancient One confirmed with a chuckle. Stephen Vincent Strange is going to be my successor, but he is not going to grace these halls for more than 2 decades. The Ancient One revealed the identity of her successor to Harry. I hope he is as laid back as you, Harry wished aloud, making the Ancient One grimace. Harry noticed the grimace on her face, but decided to ignore it. If Stephen Strange ever decided to become a nuisance, then Harry would simply remove the man from the equation. By the way, there is something else I wanted to ask you. Can the resurrection stone withstand fiend fire? Harry asked. For a moment, the Ancient One considered lying to him, but she knew that she would be only delaying the inevitable, and if Harry ever lost his trust in her, then she wouldn't be getting it back, ever. It would be disastrous for herself and the rest of the Masters of Mystic Arts if he decided to take an exception to her actions. She knew that Harry didn't care about the fact that they were protecting this reality from mystical threats. He will kill them all the same. Yes, the resurrection stone would be able to withstand fiend fire, the Ancient One answered as she took another sip from her cup. Though, a fair warning. Do not allow her to lead you astray, the Ancient One added with a glint of pleading look in her eyes, making him freeze. Her? Harry questioned her sharply. You will know what I am talking about, the Ancient One stated gravely, leaving no room for arguments. It was pretty clear that the Ancient One wasn't going to tell him anything else, and Harry also decided to drop the matter, as according to her words, he was going to understand what she meant eventually. So, is there anything else you need my help with? The Ancient One asked, changing the topic. I freed Gellert Grindelwald and his followers, Harry revealed. He didn't have any doubts that she already knew what he had done, but he still decided to tell her himself. I have noticed, the Ancient One admitted drily. A lot of organizations are going to be after him, so by extension, they will be after Lost Garden too. The wizarding world isn't as secretive as they would like to believe, the Ancient One pointed out in a warning tone. You mean Hydra? Harry questioned. Hydra was the only Muggle organization that knew about the wizarding world, or that Harry was aware of. There was always a chance that there were other organizations. There are other organizations too, Harry concluded. Perhaps. The Ancient One muttered unsurely. That was all he was going to get from her, Harry realized. Thanks for your time, teacher, Harry thanked her with a grin on his face before he stood up. Anyways, I gotta go, as I have stuff to deal with, Harry added as he levitated the box with his magic before putting it inside one of the pockets of his robes. The Ancient One gave him a nod before he finally started to leave her room. As soon as he was out of her room, he opened a portal to his apartment and stepped through. The portal closed behind him and Harry immediately started to take off his outer robes. His mind was racing with thoughts as he was able to learn quite a few things from the Ancient One. Do you think she knows about me? Lily asked with a hint of worry in her voice. She thought that the Ancient One was talking about her. I have no doubts that she already knows about you, but I don't believe she was talking about you, or she could have brought it up before, but why now? Harry pointed out. He was certain that the Ancient One wasn't referring to his mom. She was referring to someone else. And don't worry, Mom. You are never going to lead me astray. Harry decided to comfort his mom, to stop her from worrying anymore. Harry pulled out the box from his outer robe pocket before opening another portal to the Sahara Desert. There was no way he was going to release fiend fire inside his room. He could have used Jacqueline's backyard to destroy the Horcrux, but her backyard was crawling with Gellert's followers. Not only that, he had no idea if there was going to be some sort of discharge after he destroyed the Horcrux, hence, the Sahara Desert. Harry opened the box and tossed the ring on the sand. After that, he pointed his hand toward the ring and a stream of fiend fire came out of his hand and engulfed the ring. The flames roared as they tried to fight against Harry's control, but Harry quickly crushed any sort of defiance, and moments later, an inhuman screech was heard. Harry wondered if Horcrux was destroyed or not, but there was only one way to know, so he quickly dispersed the flames. The flames were so hot that the sand surface was turned into glass and the glass was still glowing with a reddish hue due to the heat. He started to glaze his charm to cool down the glass, and when the glass was finally cool enough for him to touch, he started to look for the resurrection stone, but it didn't take him long to find the stone as he remembered where he had placed the ring. He kneeled down to grab the resurrection stone, but as soon as he grabbed the stone, the world around him shifted and he found himself standing in a black wasteland. You have no idea how long I have been waiting for this day. A menacing feminine voice traveled to his ears and he slowly turned around to meet the person who spoke to him. But then he froze when he felt the raw and uncontrolled bloodlust the person was casually oozing. Chapter 143, The Woman Most Murderous, I. Bloodlust, quite an interesting term. Until now, Harry believed bloodlust to be some sort of mythical concept. How could a person even emit their murderous intentions? It should have been impossible, but here he was, being subjected to an inhuman amount of bloodlust by a woman dressed in a black and green bodysuit. Her midnight black hair was a bit of a mess and her green eyes, which were much similar to his own eyes, were glowing menacingly. Much similar to the rest of her persona, a bloodthirsty grin was adorning her lips. The woman sauntered forward with her hips swaying seductively. Everything about the strange woman was screaming danger at him. Every fiber of his being was screaming at him that the woman was extremely dangerous and his instincts were going completely haywire due to the danger he was facing, but a part of his mind was telling him that he was in no danger. The woman finally arrived in front of him and checked him out speculatively. Harry felt his chills run down his spine, and for the first time in years, he truly felt afraid and he hated the feeling. Harry knew that his hands weren't clean, he had killed several people. His kill count was in double digits, but he had nothing on the woman in front of him. He wondered how many people the woman had killed. No, the word, slaughtered or butchered seemed to be more apt. The woman finally nodded her head as the bloodthirsty grin transformed into a satisfied smirk. The woman only checked him out for a few moments, but for Harry, it felt like minutes. Peveril, come have a seat. We have a lot to talk about. The woman turned around and took a few steps before she plopped down on the ground. Harry finally found himself relaxing a bit, so he decided to clear his throat before he finally started speaking. I am not a Peveril, Harry pointed out. His voice cracked a bit due to his nervousness and he immediately hated himself for it. He hated showing weakness and this woman was making him feel weak without even trying. That was pushing so many of his buttons in the completely wrong way. Potter, Peveril. Peveril, Potter. It is all the same to me, the woman dismissively waved her hand. Harry gave her a look before nervously sitting down on the ground while facing her. You remind me of the three brothers. You possess all the good qualities of the three brothers, the woman revealed with a fond look on her face. You are talking about the three Peveril brothers? Harry asked, looking shocked. Yes, just like Antioch, you are power-hungry to the boot. Just like Cadmus, you want to bring someone from the dead, the woman mentioned airily, making Harry stiffen. He could already guess the woman's identity from her words, and if he was right, there wasn't much he could do against the woman. Then there was Ignotus. He was the smartest of the three. He was the only one wary of me. He was a very cautious human, and you are just as cautious as him, the woman finished with a chuckle. You are death, Harry stated, making the woman burst out laughing. The woman finally calmed down before she inclined her head. You are not wrong in a sense, the woman admitted. As I am the one who created the Deathly Hallows, the woman revealed with a feral grin on her face. It feels like only yesterday when I gave the Hallows to the brothers, she added with a longing look on her face. You seem to be quite fond of the three brothers, Harry pointed out hesitantly. The woman admitted that while he wasn't completely right, she was the one who created the Hallows, which meant the woman was extremely powerful. Oh yes, I am quite fond of them. Do you have any idea how much death and destruction the Deathly Hallows have caused? The woman asked with a chuckle, and Harry already knew somewhat about the bloody history of the Elder Wand, but not so much about the other Hallows. I was initially planning to kill them and be done with it, but killing only 3 of them wouldn't have been worth my time, the woman explained somewhat sullenly. So, I thought of something better. I decided to fulfill their wish. It was more of a whim on my part. Antioch wanted power, so I made the Elder Wand for him. Just as I intended, the wand caused so many deaths. Cadmus wanted to be with his wife. Foolish mortal! I gave him the resurrection stone, but what he didn't know was the fact that the stone would drive him mad, and later, he would kill himself. The woman chuckled happily, looking like she was remembering the good old times. Knowing the identity of the woman, Harry could understand where she was coming from. I am somewhat disappointed that the stone wasn't able to cause too many deaths before disappearing into obscurity. Then that fool Gaunt found it and decided to set it in a Fu * King jewelry. The little shit didn't even know what he had in his possession. If I ever get my hands on his soul, then I will twist it so badly that he will mutilate himself as soon as he is reborn. The woman snarled, releasing a huge amount of bloodlust and raw oppressive pressure, making Harry pale. Ah! Forgive me. Did I scare you? The woman asked after she finally calmed down, but Harry decided to keep his mouth shut. The woman didn't seem to mind as she decided to resume the story. Now, the youngest brother. True, he outsmarted me, but no matter how much I try, I can't bring myself to be angry at him. In fact, I was quite impressed with his conduct. He asked for something which could hide him from me, the woman sighed longingly. Now, I think I have talked enough about them. Let's get back to you, young Peveril. The woman pointed her finger at Harry and he felt a bit of dread welling up in his stomach. He wondered what the woman wanted from him. What can I do for you? Harry asked without beating around the bush. You see, I have been watching your bloodline for almost a millennia. This place is quite bland, I am sure you can understand. The woman gestured to their surroundings. I found all of them weak, lacking, and extremely bland, until Lily Potter finally gave birth to you. You were destined for greatness, but in the end, you should have been nothing more than entertainment, the woman gushed out excitedly. Then by some luck, you went ahead and awakened such an amazing power, the woman gushed out passionately. The woman took a deep breath to finally calm herself down. You have the potential to become greater than anyone else, but you need a guiding hand. That bald mortal could only teach you so much, the woman explained, and Harry immediately remembered what the Ancient One had told him. He finally remembered her warning, but he decided against any hasty action. You can help me where she failed? Harry asked curiously. He was sure that this woman could probably teach him much more than the Ancient One ever could, but that didn't mean he would become her servant. To be honest, Harry always expected Death to be a skeleton dressed in a tattered robe with a giant scythe on their shoulder, but instead, Death was a sexy woman. For example, I can help you bring your mother back to life, the woman revealed, and Harry's gaze sharpened. Just this revelation was enough for Harry to agree to her whatever demand she was going to make, but it was clear that Death wasn't done. She wanted to sweeten the deal even more. I will even teach you how to find Voldemort's soul pieces with one of his Horcrux, the woman added. Even though the deal seemed to be extremely enticing whatever it entailed, Harry couldn't help but feel suspicious. The deal was practically too good to be true, and whenever a deal was too good to be true, the chances of getting scammed were monumental. So, what do I have to do for you in return? Harry asked carefully. He didn't want to offend a being like that, especially when the being in front of him could rip his mom away from him. We will be getting married, the woman revealed, making Harry freeze as Harry.exe stopped working. It took a few moments for Harry.exe to reboot and start working again, and that is when he noticed the lack of screaming inside his mind. He finally realized that his mom wasn't here with him, and it instantly sent him into a panic and enraged mode at the same time. He was so lost in the conversation that he didn't notice his mom's absence from his mind. What did you do to my mom? Harry growled, forgetting everything about being cautious. Being cautious can get Fu * Ked from 9 ways to Sunday. His mom was more important to him than anything else. Your mom is still trapped in your physical body. As you are not here physically, your mom isn't present here with you, the woman answered calmly, seemingly not bothered in the slightest by Harry's outburst. After pondering for a bit, Harry seemed to calm down. Her words made sense as he knew that his mom was attached to his physical body. I am sorry for my outburst, Harry apologized moments later. If it was someone else beside you, then I would have pulled him apart limb from limb before shoving his spine down his throat," the woman stated firmly, making Harry grimace at the image. He wondered what his fate was going to be after he denied the offer. He didn't believe that death was used to being denied. "I can't." Harry began to speak as he finally gathered the courage to deny her demand. Being up front was better than trying to betray a being like her, but he was cut off as the woman began to speak. "I think I should explain in detail," the woman said sharply as she flared her murderous aura. The woman took a deep breath to calm herself. "Let's start from the beginning. I am Hela Odinstotir, the Asgardian goddess of war and death," the woman introduced herself. Chapter 144, The Woman Most Murderous, 2. A/N, according to HP Fandom, the Peveril brothers were born somewhere during the 11th century, but in the fanfic, they were born somewhere around in the 4th century when Hela was still free. It has been more than 1.5 millennia since she had been trapped in this wretched place by her father Dearest, with nothing to do except for watching those pathetic Peverils squabble around uselessly and monitor what was happening with the Deathly Hallows. Thankfully, the latter hobby was much more interesting than watching the Peverils follow through their usual boring routine. Her trip to Midgard on that day was completely random on her part. She still didn't know why she had decided to make that trip. Sometimes, she wondered that it was maybe one of those spur movements. The sun was setting down when she arrived on Midgard, making a beautiful sight on the horizon, so she had decided to take a walk down a river bank, and that is when the three brothers had approached her. They had recognized her as the Norse goddess of death, which was quite surprising since Hela knew very well that she wasn't a well-liked goddess, thanks to her terrifying reputation. Unlike the other gods or goddesses, she usually killed not only her enemies, but her worshippers too, as she hated the temporary power boost she would receive from their worship. Previously, she had wiped off human civilizations just because she found it amusing or just because she could. That day, she had come this close to killing the three brothers for interrupting her walk, but she decided to go with something more interesting. She decided to accept their request and create the Deathly Hallows, but what they didn't know was the fact that by doing so, she gained authority over the rest of the Peveril bloodline, and they also didn't know how much death and destruction the Deathly Hallows would cause. There was something else didn't tell them. She didn't tell them that she would be able to watch everything through them and the Hallows. The souls of the Peverils, the souls of people killed by the Peverils, and the souls of the people killed by the Hallows traveled to Hel, the underworld of Asgard, the realm where she reigned supreme, empowering her with each passing day, but all of that came crashing down on top of her head when her father Dearest finally started to change and decided that he no longer wanted to subjugate the 9 realms with force. She had no idea how the change came to be, but no matter how much she tried, she wasn't able to bring herself to change. Her father had brought her up to be a weapon, a deterrent, an unstoppable monster who would butcher through his enemies without a second thought, and to be honest, she didn't want to change in the first place. She loved killing, torturing, and butchering her way through an army as brutally as she could. Alas, her father no longer needed her, and since she couldn't change, she no longer fitted into his worldview, so there was only one thing her father could do after that, but unfortunately for him, it wasn't easy to get rid of her, as she was somewhat equal to him in terms of raw power and combat abilities. Though he had her beaten when it came to experience, and that was exactly what he used to subdue her, and then he bound her life force to Hel, to prevent her from escaping. Fenris was the only one who fought beside her, but she was killed during the battle, and the less she said about her army, the better. Yes, she did have an army, but she never cared much about them. She always believed herself to be a one-woman army, which wasn't wrong, so in all of her battles, she charged forward with her army following behind her. Though she never cared if her soldiers lived or died, as she was always busy cutting a swath through the enemies. That didn't earn her any points, and her brash and murderous personality created even more discontent between herself and her army. So, when her father, Odin, attacked her army, he only needed to kill some of them, and that was enough to make the rest of her army either desert her or stand against her. Eventually, she attempted to escape her prison, as even though her life force was tied to Hel, it was her realm. In Hel, she reigned supreme, and she used that to her advantage to mount an escape so that she could finally claim her rightful throne and wage war against the 9 realms, but her father discovered her attempt and decided to send his elite forces to stop her. She still remembered the way she had butchered her way through the father's vaunted Valkyries. She remembered how she had bathed in their blood, and she would have killed every last of those pigeons if her cowardly father hadn't used that chance to seal her again in this wretched place. Though this time, the seal was tied to his own life force, which meant that she couldn't escape this prison as long as her father was alive. It took her a whole century to finally understand why she failed to escape. Her biggest unbecoming was the fact that she was alone. She didn't have anyone who would fight for her. Her mount, Fenris, was the only being who was completely loyal to her, but Fenris was dead. That is what led her twisted mind to reach the conclusion in a twisted sort of way that she needed to find someone who would support her in both good and worse without question. It took her some time, but her twisted mind finally came to the conclusion that only her husband could support her in such a manner. Alas, there was nobody beside her in this wretched place, so she would have to wait until she was out of hell. Then there was the fact that she wouldn't just pick anyone as her husband. He needed to be worthy enough to share her bed, but Hela knew how high of a standard that was, so she wasn't holding much hope in the first place. Either way, she would have to wait until her father was finally dead. Though all of that changed only a few months ago, when the last Peveril she had been watching awakened an intriguing power. She had been watching him since the day he was born, and while she would admit that the boy was probably the most impressive Peveril to ever walk on Midgard, that was it. At the end of the day, he was a simple Midgardian, and no matter what, he wouldn't become anything more than that. Alas, that changed a few months ago when he finally awakened something called the X gene. Hela had come across one such mutant in the past and she had ripped him apart with her bare hands. That mutant wasn't anything special, but the last Peveril she had been watching was really special. Right now, he was weak, but his X gene gave him unlimited potential. If guided properly, then he would be more than worthy enough to marry her. Hela didn't care that she was so much older than him, nor did she care about the fact that he was already in love with his own mother. Someone would call her cradle robber. She had come to learn the term from watching the Peverils born through the time while she was trapped in here, but finding a worthy man was just so hard, and as a goddess, a few thousand years here and there wouldn't matter in the long run. Unlike the rest of her divine family, she didn't have an expiry date thanks to her connection with Hel. As long as Hel would exist, she would keep existing too without getting old, and what if he loved his own mother? Hela didn't believe that incest was wrong. After all, she was a goddess, and even if the other gods and goddess weren't eternal like her, they would live a long life. So, she didn't think that there was anything wrong with someone trying to keep their bloodline pure. And the matter of having to share a man with another woman was no big deal for her, as knew that powerful men were bound to have more than one lover, so even though she was an extremely proud woman, she could get used to the idea if the man she was sharing was powerful enough. Hela knew that the boy was murderous, but not murderous enough for her, but it was all right as right now, he was simply an empty canvas and she could paint him however she wished. Though, now that the boy was in front of her, she realized that it wasn't going to be that easy. Her asshole of a father had raised her to be an extremely good weapon, but he didn't raise her to be a diplomat. She had only two ways of dealing with a negotiation. Either her fearful reputation would be enough to scare the opposition into compliance, or she would kill her opposition until there was nobody left to oppose. Alas, neither of those methods would work here. She could try to take his mother hostage to force him into compliance, and that had been her initial idea, but she knew that he would stab her in the back as soon as he realized just how powerful he truly was. No. No. She couldn't have had that, so a peaceful path was her only option, no matter how distasteful it felt. She was able to partially summon him into hell, thanks to the Hallow and the Peveril blood and magic in his body, and even that would have been impossible to achieve if the seal wasn't already weakening. She had noticed that in the last half of the century, the seal had started to weaken and cracks had started to form all around. It came as a great joy to her when she realized that her father was not for long in Asgard, and she had used one of those cracks to reach out to the Hallow, so she could summon the last Peveril. How about this? You accept to become my student so that I could teach you everything, while in return you would make a magical vow that you will come to my assistance whenever I am in danger. Hela suggested diplomatically, even though it felt so distasteful. Chapter 145, The Woman Most Murderous, 3. To be honest, Harry didn't know what to think about Hela Odinstotir, but it was obvious that he couldn't trust her. While he would admit that he wasn't an expert when it came to Norse mythology, he was pretty sure that he had never heard of someone named Hela Odinstotir. She could have been a minor goddess, but that clearly wasn't the case. According to her last name, Hela should be Odin's daughter, but he was pretty sure that Thor and Loki were the only children of Odin, at least, according to the lore. Regardless of that fact, the woman was clearly powerful, and if she could help him resurrect his mom, then Harry wasn't going to complain. Then there was the fact that the woman initially wanted to get married. That was another can of worms Harry wanted nothing to do with. "Can I have some time to think?" Harry asked. Yes, Hela had been upfront about what she wanted from him, but Harry couldn't help but think that there was more to that. If Hela was displeased at his question, she hid it pretty well. Of course, I don't want to pressure you into anything, Hela assured him with a smile, but she was anything but smiling on the inside. It would have been so much better if she could use her usual tactics to get what she wanted, but unfortunately, she had to play nice. Thank you. Harry offered her politely. By the way, what is this place? He asked as he looked around at their surroundings. This is hell, my dimension, Hela answered with a grin. I know, there is not much to see here, but this is how I like this place, Hela lied smoothly. While she was the uncontested ruler of hell, she hated being trapped in this place. This place was mind-numbingly boring. You said that I have all the good qualities of the three brothers, right? Does this mean anything in the real world? Harry asked curiously. Hela seemed to beam at the question. I am glad you asked. You see, the Hallows might work for everyone, but they work best in the hands of a Peveril. You see, with that wand, Antioch was truly unbeatable, but he was killed in his sleep, Hela answered with a shrug. What about Cadmus? Harry asked as he furrowed his brows at her. You said that he went mad for using the stone, Harry added carefully. Yes, he did, and only a Peveril could use the stone to its full potential. A Peveril could summon anyone through the stone, but in someone else's hands, the stone could only summon a person who had been close to them, Hela explained, and Harry nodded his head in understanding. With the understanding of how the stone worked, he came up with a plan. Well, anyway, it is useless for me as I don't want to lose my sanity before killing myself, Harry shrugged dismissively, before all of a sudden, he looked at Hela speculatively. Ah! I know. You can remove that enchantment for me, can't you? Harry asked hopefully, only for Hela to smile at him before nodding her head. Though in reality, Hela was scowling at him on the inside. The boy was too smart for his own good, but Hela was playing the long game, and a part of her was quite glad that her prospective husband wasn't as dumb as a sack of rocks. Now, she was even more determined to get him to marry her. In that twisted mind of hers, Harry was checking all the right boxes for her perfect husband criteria. Done. I have removed the curse completely, so be careful about handing out the stone to someone, Hela said after a few moments of silence. To be honest, she would have preferred to make Harry immune to the curse, but options were extremely limited from here. Harry stared at her for the next few moments with an unsure look on his face before finally nodding his head. It seems that this will be all for today, Hela mused as she pointed toward his hands. He looked down at his hands only to find that his hands were beginning to turn transparent. What do I need to do to return here? Harry asked hurriedly. He might have asked for some time to think about the deal, but that didn't mean that he wasn't planning to accept the deal. He simply wanted some time to consider the deal and the potential consequences before finally accepting the deal. You simply need to touch the stone and call my name. I will take care of the rest, Hela barely finished answering before his surroundings finally started to shift, and moments later, he found himself standing in the desert with the resurrection stone in his hand. He shifted on his feet as he stumbled a bit due to the sudden change of surroundings, and the glass cracked under his feet. Hadrian! Are you all right? His mom's worried voice rang inside his mind. Yeah, Mom. I am all right, Harry assured her as he started to think how to break the news of meeting Hela to her. He wasn't planning to hide anything in the first place, so he knew that she was going to throw quite a tantrum. Are you sure? You looked kind of lost for a bit before all of a sudden, you lost your footing, Lily pointed out worriedly. Yes, I am all right, but something did happen. Come on, let's go back to base, I will tell you everything there, Harry said as he opened a portal, and as soon as the portal was stable, he stepped through, leaving the desert with the resurrection stone in his hand. Time skip, an hour later. Come on, say something, Harry urged his mother to say something with a slightly worried look on his face. Right now, he was in his mindscape, and he finally finished telling his mother about the whole meeting, and that was 10 minutes ago. Since then, she hasn't said anything to him, and her silence was starting to worry him. He started to wonder if his mother was considering the fact that he might be planning to marry someone else. Harry would admit, Hela was quite beautiful, and there was something special about her, which made her so desirable, at least to Harry. Maybe it was her bloodlust, or maybe it had something to do with her being a divine entity. Harry didn't know for sure, but no matter how desirable she was, he wasn't planning to marry her. There was only one woman in his heart, and there was no way he was going to betray her in such a manner. Lily finally stopped pondering while looking away from Harry. Are you sure that is really a goddess, or if she is really the goddess she says she is? Lily asked in a grave tone. If Lily was being honest, she was barely holding herself back from screaming in rage. She always knew that her Hadrian was someone special, and the recent years had proved her suspicions to be true. While a part of her felt quite proud over the fact that a goddess, a Merlin be damned real goddess, had started paying attention to her baby boy, but the rest of her was angry at the fact that the goddess was eyeing her Hadrian to snatch for herself. That was something she wasn't happy about, but still, she knew that screaming wouldn't help. She needed to think about everything rationally. Lily would admit that she didn't know much about gods. Yes, she went to church with her parents and her bitch of a sister when she was still little, but they never bought too much into religion. Though there were a few things she knew about pagan gods. They were quite prideful, egotistical, arrogant, conceited, and so on. If Hela Odinstotir was really a part of the Norse pantheon, then she would be just like that. It was never good to anger a god like that. I don't know. I know a few things about the Norse pantheon, but I have never seen any mention of someone named Hela, Harry admitted with a frown. But the Ancient One knew about her, and I think the Ancient One warned me about Hela, Harry added thoughtfully. Then you can always ask her about Hela, Lily suggested. I was already planning to do that, Harry admitted. He wasn't sure if the Ancient One was going to be any help or not with her being her usual cryptic self, but he could at least try. By the way, I am not going to marry her. There is only one woman in my heart, Harry said softly before wrapping his arms around her. Lily hummed in contentment as she snuggled into his chest. For the time being, she decided to enjoy her son's company to her heart's content, as she wasn't sure what the future had in store for them. After a whole minute, the two of them finally pulled away from each other before Harry slowly leaned down and captured her lips with his own. Forgetting about everything else, the two of them started to make out, and after a few minutes, the two of them finally lay down on the floor, but they continued their make-out session. Chapter 146, Know Thy Friends, 3. After spending a few hours with his mom, Harry finally decided to move on with his plans. He wanted to summon the spirits of Marvolo and Morfingaunt and then ask them some questions. Not just them, there were some other spirits he wanted to summon, but once again, he was faced with the dilemma of whether he should even trust Hela in the first place or not. So, after leaving his mindscape, he decided to pay the Ancient One another visit. He wasn't expecting her to be anything besides her usual cryptic self, but he at least wanted to confirm if the woman was really Hela Odinstotir or not. So, without wasting any more time, he quickly portaled in front of her house. The Ancient One seemed to be somewhat reluctant, but she ultimately confirmed that the woman wasn't lying about her identity, and before he could leave, she warned him once again not to get swayed by her words. Are you leaving? Harry was about a portal when Caecilius called out to him. He had noticed Caecilius approaching, but to be honest, he wasn't expecting the man to call him out. Yet. I got what I came for, Harry answered as he turned around to look at Caecilius. Can you spare some time? Caecilius asked, making Harry frown as he had never seen Caecilius act in such a manner. Sure, Harry agreed as he started to follow Caecilius out of the Ancient One's house. Caecilius started to lead him toward one of the gardens. The two of them finally stopped at the fence and they could see several masters of mystic arts practicing martial arts in the courtyard. Tell me, Harry, what do you see? Caecilius asked, and once again, Harry found himself in a dilemma. He could see a lot of things, but knowing Caecilius, the right answer would be weaklings, but Harry refrained from voicing his answer. Caecilius gave Harry a disappointed look when he realized that Harry wasn't going to say anything. I see weaklings, Caecilius growled out as he jerked his chin toward the masters of mystic arts practicing martial arts. Why do you call them weaklings? Harry asked. He could already guess why, but he wanted to hear it from the man. He respected the man up to a certain extent. Because they live by the rules made by others. They are like mindless sheep. They don't question anything and they would simply do what they are told, Caecilius explained with a hint of disgust in his voice, and Harry had to admit, Caecilius was right. They don't want anything to change. In fact, I am sure they are going to fight against a change even though the change is going to be for the good, Caecilius continued with a scowl, and once again, Harry had to admit, Caecilius was right. That was why exactly Harry had no plans to bring changes to the wizarding world and was trying to create his own wizarding community. What exactly are you trying to say? Harry asked as he was starting to lose his patience. He hated talking in circles and he was a very busy boy. Caecilius gave him an exasperated look before he started to speak again. Tell me, Harry, what do you think about death? Caecilius asked curiously. Death is a natural part of life. Harry didn't know what else to say. Once again, Harry knew what Caecilius was trying to say, but he wanted his answer to be least controversial. Caecilius stared at him for the next few moments before he finally started to speak. Do you really believe that? I have looked you up, you know. Both of your parents were killed by someone named Voldemort. Don't tell me you don't want to have them back. Caecilius asked passionately. Harry simply stared at the man intensely for a couple of moments before he started to speak. He wasn't angry or anything at Caecilius, as what the man said was basically public knowledge, though he wondered how Caecilius was able to find the name Voldemort, as people deliberately avoided mentioning his name. Of course, I want to bring them back, but that is not how that works, Caecilius. Harry explained, but Caecilius stepped forward with an excited grin on his face. This was the first time Harry was seeing the man grin like that, and he had to admit, the sight was highly unsettling. But what if we could change that? What if there is no need for anyone to die? Caecilius asked excitedly, making Harry give him a weird look. Caecilius was definitely up to something, and it wasn't good. You and I aren't like them. We are not weaklings like them. I have found something that might change the world, Caecilius growled as he pointed at the masters of mystic arts who were still practicing martial arts. For the first time since the start of the conversation, Harry started to feel somewhat worried. He didn't know what exactly Caecilius was talking about, but it couldn't be anything good. Harry, you will be able to bring back your parents too, Caecilius added excitedly as he placed his hands over Harry's shoulders, and Harry didn't miss the mad glint in his eyes. This was the second time someone was offering to help him bring back his parents, and if he was being honest, Harry trusted Hela more than he would trust Caecilius. Caecilius didn't have the power to bring the dead or prevent anyone from dying, which meant, a third party, probably a godlike being, was involved in this, but why didn't the Ancient One tell him anything about this? She should have warned him about this, right? Then all of a sudden, something clicked inside his mind, and he realized that he was starting to depend too much on the Ancient One. For all of his problems, he was starting to look toward the Ancient One. Caecilius, I don't know what to say. Harry breathed out as he removed Caecilius' hands from his shoulders. Can you tell me more about this before I decide anything? Harry requested with a genuine look on his face. Right now, I have stumbled upon something, but I can't tell you anything for sure at this moment, Caecilius lied. He obviously knew more than that, but he decided not to tell Harry much, as Harry was somewhat close to the Ancient One. Everything was still in the early stages, so he decided to employ caution. I see. Harry mumbled with a disappointed look on his face. Harry was almost certain that Caecilius was lying to him, and even though Harry could have used legilimency to rip into Caecilius' mind, he decided to play it safe. You are going to tell me if you find something, right? Harry added with a pleading look on his face. Of course, don't worry. Caecilius patted him on the shoulder with a proud smile on his face. I will not be keeping you any longer, and if you agree to help me, then you know where to find me, right? Caecilius asked, and Harry simply nodded his head in understanding. With that said, Caecilius started to walk away, but then all of a sudden he stopped and turned around to look at Harry. By the way, let's keep this conversation between ourselves, Caecilius said with a serious look on his face, and after getting another nod from Harry, he started to walk again. Do you believe him? Lily asked as soon as he was gone. She didn't want to interrupt Harry while he was talking. No, I don't. I don't believe he has the power to fulfill his promises, Harry pointed out thoughtfully. He is definitely up to something, and I don't believe it is going to be anything good, Harry added warily. You know, Hela also offered something similar to you only a few hours ago, Lily pointed out, trying to play devil's advocate as she wanted to keep Harry to herself. If Caecilius could provide them with another means to resurrect people, then she wasn't going to complain. Yes, but I know for sure that she is the Asgardian god of death, which gives her, if not some, then complete authority over the death, but I know nothing of the being Caecilius has made contact with. Then you have to remember that Hela never mentioned that she would teach me how to bring back the dead, she only mentioned that she will help me revive you. Your case is different as you are not completely dead, Harry explained while frowning internally. You are probably right. Are you planning to tell the Ancient One about his plans? Lily asked curiously. No, Harry refused, much to Lily's surprise. She possesses some sort of precognitive ability, and she is extremely competent with that ability of hers. She probably already knows what Caecilius is up to, but had decided to stand back and watch for the time being, Harry explained dismissively. From what Harry had witnessed, the Ancient One possessed some sort of precognitive ability, but it probably wasn't a magical ability or spell, as otherwise, he would have learned the spell with a simple look. It might be a mutant ability, as mutant abilities are extremely diversified. A mutant could be a blue-furred ape or the world's strongest telepath. Then, Harry could be completely wrong in the first place, as Harry needed to see a magical ability or spell in the work to learn it, but if the Ancient One wasn't using the spell in front of him, then there was no way for to learn the spell, or there might be something else going on. Okay, then I will leave it up to you. Lily shrugged as she decided to leave it to Harry. So, what now? Lily asked. Now, I will be having a chat with a few people, Harry revealed with a grin marring his face as he stepped through a portal. Chapter 147, The Enemies Who Planned, 4. Wizengamot Chambers, Ministry of Magic, November 6, 1994. Amelia Bones entered the Wizengamot Chambers and gave a nod to the Auror guards standing at the door out of habit when they greeted her. She looked around at the gathered faces before she started to make her way toward the seat reserved for the head of the DMLE. There was a Bones family seat too, which was being occupied by her trusted Connie Hammer at the moment. Susan was still too young to occupy the Bones family seat, and Amelia was already occupying the head of the DMLE seat, which meant that she couldn't occupy both at the same time, so she had to get someone else to occupy that seat who would happily support her views and opinions. Connie Hammer was such a woman. She had known Connie for years, and even though the woman was almost a decade younger than her, she had earned her trust through her own hard work. Amelia finally took her seat and looked around. The chamber was quickly filling up and she wondered what this meeting was about. This meeting was supposed to be on November 2nd, but the meeting had to be cancelled due to Gellert Grindelwald escaping prison after almost 5 decades, which meant the meeting wasn't about Grindelwald. Grindelwald was another sour topic in her mind, which made her grimace internally. Until a few days ago she didn't even know that Gellert Grindelwald was still alive. All of them had assumed that Dumbledore had killed Grindelwald after their so-called legendary duel, and Dumbledore never bothered to correct them. She knew Dumbledore quite well, and from the way he fought the Voldemort War, she should have known that the man couldn't have killed anyone. Alas, it was too late to play the blame game. Gellert Grindelwald was somewhere out there along with his followers, doing Merlin knows what, but that wasn't the end of her miseries. Apparently, Voldemort wasn't killed during that fateful Halloween night like they assumed. Apparently, the man was still alive even though he was in a much weaker state, but he wouldn't stay like that for long. According to Avery, the Dark Mark was getting darker and the Death Eaters believed it to be a sign that the Dark Lord was finally regaining his power and he would soon make his return. The damage both Grindelwald and Voldemort could do to the wizarding community was simply unfathomable for her, and the prospect of two of them joining hands was not something she even wanted to think about. Amelia was broken out of her musings when the chamber grew completely silent thanks to the arrival of the minister and his entourage. Albus also entered the room along with the minister, but it was clear that he wasn't a part of the minister's entourage. Cornelius seemed to be intentionally keeping some distance from Albus. All of them stood up from their seats as a show of respect. Cornelius finally climbed up to his podium and took his seat with her personal pink toad following him. Amelia hated the despicable woman and she would have loved to knock Umbridge a few pegs down, but she couldn't make a move thanks to Cornelius. Albus also took his seat and banged the gavel on his table as a formality before he finally started to speak. Wizengamot has gathered for an emergency meeting on behalf of the minister, Albus declared to the chamber before turning toward Cornelius. Minister, if you please. Albus requested in his usual grandfatherly tone. The minister didn't even give Dumbledore a look before he stood up and cleared his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been played for fools for 14 years, Cornelius passionately declared, and murmurs broke out inside the room. What are you talking about, minister? Lucius Malfoy asked innocently, and Amelia immediately realized that it was a staged performance and she wasn't the only one to realize that. Oh, yes, I am talking about Harry Potter, the man declared, earning some gasps and screams of outrage from the gathered crowd while most simply looked confused. Cornelius banged his gavel on the table to get the crowd in order. Only a few days ago, we discovered that Harry Potter isn't his real name. It is a fake name and he had been openly using that fake name to make a fool out of us, Cornelius declared, and another round of murmurs broke out inside the chamber. That's bullshit, and even you know that, Sirius Black screamed at the minister as he stood up from his seat with a look of outrage on his face. Mr. Black, you will not speak to the minister like that, Dolores Umbridge spoke shrilly as she also stood up from her seat and glared at Sirius. That is Lord Black to you, you glorified pencil pusher. What the foo *k are you even doing here? I clearly remember that you don't have a family seat in Wizengamot, neither is a secretary allowed to seat in Wizengamot within the voting block, Sirius growled, and at his words, Umbridge was practically fuming as her face started to turn red. I agree with Lord Black, what is she even doing here, minister? Cyrus Greengrass asked with a calm look on his face. The minister seemed to fumble at the question. Well, you see. The minister tried to explain, but there wasn't much he could say as most of the Wizengamot was now paying rapt attention to him. First of all, Umbridge wasn't a well-liked person by any of the factions, as the Dark faction knew about her true origins, and it was kind of self-explanatory for the Grey faction and the Light faction. My brothers and sisters, we are not here to talk about Madame Umbridge, we are here to talk about the crime that had been committed against our society, Lucius Malfoy declared passionately when he realized that the meeting was going off topic. Cornelius threw him a grateful look. Yes, we will talk about him, but after the glorified pencil pusher is dealt with, Augusta Longbottom declared sharply from her seat. The Light faction was further divided into two parts. The flexible faction, which idolized and lived by Dumbledore's ideals. They believed the dogma that everyone deserves a second chance, and they would happily fight a war with stunners and disarming charms even if they were going to be killed left and right. Then came the hardliner faction, which consisted of people who wanted to deal with the Death Eaters in a more permanent manner, and Augusta Longbottom was the leader of the said faction. Amelia wondered if she should bring the old battle axe into their small group. Her involvement would definitely help their group in all the fields. Augusta Longbottom was old, but nobody could deny the fact that the woman was still very dangerous. Then there was the fact that the woman would rather die than ever support Voldemort. Cornelius fumbled with his hands nervously as he looked around the chamber before he finally turned toward Umbridge. Dolores, please leave the chamber, Cornelius requested weakly, and Amelia thought that Dolores would protest, but she threw Augusta Longbottom a venomous glare before she started to leave the chamber with a huff. Augusta completely ignored the woman with an indifferent look on her face. Well, now that she is finally gone, can we finally return to the original topic? Theodore Knott Sr. asked, looking somewhat irritated. Yes, yes. Cornelius eagerly agreed, but before the man could continue, Sirius Black decided to interrupt him again. I will like to stop you there, Minister. My godson was only 1 year old when he became famous, and I am certain that he was never interviewed by anyone, which means that he never told anyone that his name is Harry Potter. The wizarding community simply believed that his name is Harry Potter, so my godson lies completely blameless on this matter, Sirius Black pointed out as he glanced toward Albus from the corner of his eyes. While Amelia would like to point out that he wasn't completely blameless as he never bothered to correct them, unfortunately, the last time she checked, not correcting a misunderstanding was not a punishable crime, otherwise, Dumbledore would be in one of her cells, waiting for his trial, not sitting among them. Additionally, the boy was still a minor, so while using a fake name was a crime, pinning the crime on his shoulders was going to be a completely different matter. Though on a personal level, Amelia didn't know what to make of the boy. The boy was extremely cautious and cunning. A very dangerous combination. The only thing he was lacking right now was power and political clout, but that wouldn't matter as everyone would be looking in his direction to defeat Voldemort. For the first time, she was finally starting to buy into Alastair's claims. She already believed him on the matter that the boy had killed his Muggle family, not that they could prove that, but she never believed that he was some sort of mastermind. Yes, Lord Black, I already know that, but while we can't blame him for the initial misunderstanding, we can't declare him completely blameless, as he could have fixed the misunderstanding any time in the last couple of years with a simple interview, but he didn't do that, the minister declared smoothly with practiced ease. Amelia felt a pit form in her stomach when she realized that Cornelius and Lucius weren't planning to charge the boy for using a fake name, they were aiming for something else. She glanced toward Albus from the corner of her eyes and noticed that the man didn't look much surprised at this development, and the dread she was feeling intensified. Chapter 148, The Enemies Who Planned, v. Wizengamot Chambers, Ministry of Magic. Can we please move on? Augusta Longbottom drawled with a bored look on her face. We have already agreed upon the fact that we cannot punish someone for not clearing a misunderstanding, the woman added, but decided to leave the rest unsaid. Everyone in the chamber knew who she was talking about, but since she never accused anyone, Dumbledore didn't have a leg to stand upon. He wasn't happy about everyone using him as an example. Why couldn't everyone understand that killing was never a solution? Minister, I do not believe Harry Potter is at fault here, Lord Parkinson said, surprising almost everyone inside the chamber. I personally believe that the fault lies in his upbringing. He never had a parental guardian who could teach him right from wrong. His current guardian is only 19 years old. What can you expect from someone so young? Lord Parkinson explained passionately, earning reluctant agreement from a lot of people. Minister, I also find agreeing with Lord Parkinson on this. Lucius Malfoy immediately jumped in to support his friends. If any of the big names in the chamber had any doubts about if the whole ordeal was practiced or not, then all of their doubts were washed away at this instant. What are you trying to say, Lord Malfoy? Sirius Black is Harry Potter's legal guardian, Cyrus Greengrass pointed out with a confused look on his face. But is he a fitting guardian for Harry Potter? Lucius Malfoy asked coyly, and Amelia immediately realized what Lucius and the others were aiming for from the beginning. She also concluded that Albus had some idea about what they were up to, and he decided to use that to his own advantage. This was not good, but she wasn't sure if there was a law where the Ministry could assign a minor a new guardian. There were so many ancient laws that Amelia knew nothing about. Lucius, you should be careful about what you are saying. Sirius leveled Lucius with a glare. I was cleared by the mind healers before I was allowed to become his guardian. You better be a certified mind healer before you start throwing accusations, Sirius growled as he glared venomously at Lucius, but the man didn't seem to be fazed in the slightest. Ah! Lord Black! There is something I have here that says otherwise. Cornelius finally decided to step in with a folder in his hands. I would like you honorable lords and ladies to take a look at this, Cornelius said before he tapped the folder with the wand, and the folder floated down to the scribe. The scribe grabbed the folder and started to pass on some parchments from the folder to all the Wizengamot members with magic. Amelia received the parchment before Sirius Black could, and she couldn't help but frown as soon as she finished reading everything on the parchment. She didn't even know that there was a law like that. She felt bad for both Sirius and Harry Potter. She would have felt bad for the person who was going to become Harry Potter's new guardian if they weren't going to be an adult Wixen. After all, killing a Muggle is much simpler than killing a Wixen. Alas, there were many ways to get to a person, and the boy had proved himself smart and cunning enough to deal with his problems without getting his hands dirty. Bull's height. This can't be real! Sirius exclaimed in outrage after he finally received his own parchment. Lord Black, believe it or not, this law is very much real, the minister assured Sirius with a gleeful look on his face. He knew that he was basically alienating Sirius Black, but he knew that he couldn't win every battle. According to the law, you are clearly unfit as a guardian of a last surviving member of a pure-blood family, the minister added harshly. It was very much unlike his usual attitude, but Lucius had assured him that he needed to be firm. How was I supposed to know about this? Sirius questioned incredulously. As a pure-blood law, you should have been aware of this law, the minister retorted, but Amelia very much doubted that even Cornelius knew about this law a few days ago. Alas, that wasn't going to matter right now. Now, the Wizengamot will be taking a vote to decide if you are even a fitting guardian or not. As long as the ministry is concerned, you are not a fitting guardian, the minister declared before he turned toward Albus, who simply gave the man a disappointed look for whatever reason. No. I won't accept this! Sirius screamed in protest, but before the chamber could delve into pandemonium, Albus banged his gavel on the table to bring order to the chamber. Lord Black, you will maintain order and decorum in the chamber, Albus said as he gave Sirius a stern look, and Sirius simply glared back at Albus. When you accepted your family seat, you pledged to uphold the laws of Wizengamot. Now, if there is another incident like that, then I will have you escorted out of this chamber, Albus warned the man sternly, and even though Sirius wanted to vehemently protest, he ultimately decided to return to his seat with a grumpy look on his face. He realized that losing his temper at this moment won't do him any good. He needed to keep his calm and plan his next move. It was clear that he had no allies here. He was expecting at least Albus to help him or support him, but the man clearly had his own plans. He knew that Albus wanted to bring Harry back to Britain, and the man knew that Sirius was going to be no help to him. The rest of the light side wasn't going to support him, since Albus had clearly decided to no longer support him, and the dark faction would never support him unless their life depended on it. Chief Warlock, I believe Lord Black should abstain from voting as he is personally involved in this matter, Lord Yaxley requested, and Albus nodded his head. Lord Black, I ask you to refrain from voting, Albus said as he turned to look at Sirius, but he didn't even wait for Sirius' reply before turning back. Sirius clutched his hands tightly as he blamed his own naivety. This wasn't the first time he was blaming himself. He knew he lacked experience, and he wondered if it would have been any different if he had decided to learn politics from his grandfather instead of rebuffing the man's attempts at every chance. Please light up your wands if you deem Sirius to be a fitting guardian, Albus declared, and the ones who lit up their wands were from the light faction. The dark faction and the grey faction didn't even move, and Sirius immediately knew that he had lost. The light side and the dark side were almost the same numbers, so most of the votes were decided by the grey faction. Albus looked around before looking at the scribe who was doing the counting. When the scribe gave him a nod, Albus decided to continue. Please light up your wands if you deem Sirius to be an unfitting guardian, Albus called out, and the whole dark faction and grey faction lit up their wands, making Sirius slump down in defeat. Amelia concluded that the grey faction, which was led by Cyrus Greengrass, was in on this whole ordeal from the beginning. Cyrus Greengrass was a businessman, which meant that he was offered something by the dark faction, which led him to rally the whole grey faction to support this madness. This wouldn't end nicely for anyone. When the counting was finally done, the scribe walked up to Dumbledore's podium and handed him the parchment. Albus looked over the parchment before placing it on his podium as the scribe returned to his own seat. The majority of the Wizengamot had decided that Sirius Black is not a fitting guardian for Harry Potter, Albus declared, and Sirius simply closed his eyes with a pained look on his face. He wondered how he was going to face Harry the next time he saw him. Now, I would ask the Wizengamot to nominate some prospective members who could be a fitting guardian for Harry Potter, Albus declared, and Lord Knot was the first one to stand up as soon as he finished speaking. I nominate Lucius Malfoy. Everyone knows that Draco Malfoy is an upstanding young heir of our society, so I will trust nobody else to do a better job than Lucius Malfoy, Lord Knot declared passionately, and Amelia barely stopped herself from cursing the Basta *D. They would probably kill the boy as soon as they could. I second, Lord Parkinson declared before anyone could object, but Amos Diggory still stood up and decided to object. I object, Chief Warlock. I do not believe Harry Potter will be safe under the roof of a former Death Eater, Amos declared, earning screams of outrage from the dark faction. I detest that accusation, Lord Diggory. Lucius exclaimed, and the dark faction calmed down before Albus could bang his gavel. I was a victim of the Imperious Curse, and I was found innocent by this very governing body. Harry Potter is my hero. He was just a babe when he saved me from him. I would like to return the favor to him, Lucius Malfoy declared passionately, convincing only a few fools that he was telling the truth, but his words mattered. I would like to nominate Amos Diggory, Alpheus Doge declared as he stood up from his own seat, surprising the said man as he wasn't accepting to get nominated in the first place. I second, Lord Abbot declared as he stood up from the seat. Most of us have met Cedric Diggory, and I believe there could be no one better than Amos to raise the boy who lived, Lord Abbot added, to earn some agreements from the Wizengamot members. Albus decided to wait, and when nobody else was nominated, he decided to start the voting. Chapter 149, The Enemies Who Planned, 6. Wizengamot Chambers, Ministry of Magic. The vote was conducted within the next few minutes, and to be honest, the results were quite surprising for a lot of people. Though Amelia Bones wasn't surprised by the results in the slightest. She had long realized that the ordeal was planned beforehand, and she had to wonder what Lucius Malfoy had to gain from all of this. She didn't believe that the man was foolish enough to kill the boy right away. Or was Voldemort already back and Lucius was simply doing his master's bidding? She wondered if she should reach out to Sirius too. That man had practically lost everything to the madman. First, he lost his best friends to the madman, and then he was sent to Azkaban without following the correct procedures, and just moments ago, the man lost his godson. The Black family fortune was quite legendary, and you can't fight a war with empty pockets. The Black fortune would be quite useful, but after a few moments, she quickly shook her head. No, the man was way too hot-headed for her liking. She had to admit, he was keeping his cool considering the circumstances, but it wasn't enough for her to make her trust him with sensitive information or tasks. Madam Bones, Lucius Malfoy called out to her with a concerned look on his face. I would like to have my new ward in my custody as soon as possible. With everything happening all around us and his name coming out of the goblet, I am worried that someone might be after him. I am really worried about him, Harry Potter's new guardian, Lucius Malfoy added with a grave look on his face. If Amelia didn't know better, then she would have thought that the man was genuinely worried for the boy. She wondered what the Wizengamot was thinking when they decided to vote for Lucius Malfoy to become Harry Potter's new guardian. Ah, right. They weren't thinking about anything. The vote was rigged from the start. The whole dark faction decided to vote for Lucius Malfoy, which wasn't unexpected, but the whole grey faction went along with them. Yeah, that was really surprising. Amelia wondered how much gold Lucius had to part with to get the grey faction in his corner. It must have been quite an amount, or she would eat her hat, Amelia decided. Of course, Lord Malfoy, but I would need clearance from both the British Ministry and the ICW stating that we are legally in the right to bring Harry Potter back to Britain, Amelia explained primly, making Lucius frown as clearly wasn't expecting this. Is a clearance really needed? I am his legal guardian and I want him back in the country, Lucius asked with a look of confusion. Yes, I want to avoid any incident with the Macusa. I don't think they are going to happily hand Harry Potter back to us, Amelia explained smoothly as she glanced toward their cowardly Ministry of Magic, who looked around nervously. They would need to get rid of the spineless Basta *D as soon as they could, or they would lose the war before it could even begin. The man would happily sell the ministry to Voldemort if it meant he could keep his position. In reality, she could have sent her Aurors right away to grab Harry Potter, as Lucius Malfoy was the primary guardian as long as the law was considered. The MCU would have obviously tried to interfere, not that it would have mattered, but getting the clearance from the ICW would take some time, which would give her enough time to remove Harry Potter from where he was. The boy was going to be pivotal for their victory, and she would be damned if she allowed Lucius Malfoy to have the boy. Of course. Of course. Lucius, Amelia is right as always. I think it will be better to cover all of our bases, just in case. The minister quickly agreed to Amelia's suggestion. A spineless coward, just like I said, Amelia mused thoughtfully, but Albus seemed to be giving her a contemplative look. She wondered what the old man was thinking, and that is when she felt a mental probe brush against her shield. At first, she frowned, but moments later, she smirked at Albus. This wasn't the first time Albus had tried something brazen like this, and while she would have loved to arrest him for the illegal use of legilimency, she knew she couldn't. First of all, she had to prove that someone had tried to use legilimency on her, which was practically impossible as Albus never breached her shields and the man was very experienced in the art, so he wouldn't leave any telltale signs of the assault, and even if was able to prove that someone had used legilimency on her, it would be completely impossible to pin the blame on Dumbledore's shoulders, as in the eyes of many, he could do no wrong. How long is it going to take to get the clearance from the ICW? Lucius asked Cornelius. I will send someone to the ICW headquarters right away. Cornelius told him that he would be sending someone right away, instead of answering Lucius' question. Lucius was quite displeased with this development, but he knew that Cornelius would never do something knowingly that might get him in trouble in the international magical community. Okay. I will leave it to you then. Lucius smiled as he sighed in relief. He still needed to play the part of a caring guardian. There wasn't anything else to discuss after that, so the meeting was finally called to a closing by the minister. When Amelia was making her way toward her office while wondering what to do next, she was surprised when she noticed Sirius Black approaching her. Amelia stopped and turned toward the man. The man looked calm, but in reality, he was apoplectic. How may I help you, Lord Black? Amelia asked politely. Can we talk privately? Sirius asked, and after a second, Amelia finally nodded her head as she gestured him to follow her. The rest of their walk passed in complete silence, and when they finally entered her office, Amelia offered Sirius a seat before she took her own seat. You know Lucius would do to Harry, don't you? Sirius asked while gritting his teeth. Amelia considered her options as she started to consider her options. He might be planning to do that eventually, but he won't be doing anything immediately, Amelia answered carefully. Bull's height! Sirius exclaimed angrily as he slammed his fist on the table, making Amelia glare at him. This was exactly why she decided not to bring him into their fold, even though his fortune would be Merlin sent for them. He could always arrange for Harry to have an accident. Sirius pointed out angrily. Yes, there is always that option, Amelia agreed internally. I can understand that you are angry with what happened in the Wizengamot chambers, but that doesn't mean you can scream at me, Amelia pointed out sharply, making Sirius rub the back of his neck sheepishly as he realized his mistake. I am sorry, Sirius muttered an apology. Can you not send someone to get him? He asked after a few moments of silence. Once again, Sirius proved to Amelia why he wasn't fit for any clandestine organization. You can't request something like that openly. I am sorry, Lord Black. That is something I can't do. Regardless of our personal feelings, Lucius Malfoy was decided to be Harry Potter's new guardian by the Wizengamot, and since his new guardian wants to have him back in this country, there is not much I can do to help you, Amelia explained while giving him an apologetic look. Sirius clutched his hands in anger. Thank you for hearing me out, Sirius bit out painfully as he slowly stood up. Please do not do anything foolish. You godson will need all the support he can have, and you being dead or imprisoned isn't going to help him in the slightest, Amelia warned him just before Sirius could open the door. Sirius gave her a reluctant nod before heading out. Amelia rubbed her temples before she decided to gather another meeting. Tonks was exempted from the meeting as she was still at Hogwarts. They needed to know about the recent development as soon as they could. She decided to send Alastair to grab Harry while she decided to pay a visit to the Longbottom Hall herself to meet Augusta after the meeting was finished. Once again she started to wonder if Voldemort was really back. She would need to send either Connie or Gawain to Azkaban to inspect the Dark Mark. After they learned that the darkening of the Dark Mark could be a sign of the Dark Lord finally returning, they have decided to keep an eye on the Dark Mark of the Azkaban inmates to stay abreast of any new developments. Chapter 150, The Enemies Who Planned, 7. A/N, to be honest, I am getting kind of fed up with all the comments of filler chapters and all that. Do you guys even know what filler chapters are? Filler chapters are chapters that don't have any impact on the main plot. The chapters I am posting most definitely have an impact on the plot. If I see any more complaints, then I will simply stop posting these chapters on WN and I will only post chapters in which Harry will be fighting someone on WN. If that is what you want, then say so. Then I have also seen so many complaints about short chapters. If you want, then I can stop posting regularly and stack chapters together and post them in one go. You can only have either of these. Do you guys want daily updates but short chapters, or do you want weekly chapters but long chapters? The ball is in your court. Equals. Unknown location. The silhouettes of 6 people could be seen gathered around a round table, but none of the features except for their gender could be deduced as the room was barely lit. A holographic picture was floating over the center of the table, and anyone who had read about the Wizarding World War would have recognized the person in the picture. There is no mistaking it, that is Gellert Grindelwald, one of the men confirmed for the rest of the group. Are you sure? He looks kind of young, one of the females asked, looking confused. Yes, that is what confuses me. He is as old as Dumbledore, but he is looking younger than how I remember him, the man agreed with a hint of confusion in his voice. Is there a chance that it might be someone else masquerading as Grindelwald? Another man asked curiously. No, that is most definitely him. I have worked under him for years, and there are some things a person could never mimic no matter how much they try, the first man explained gravely. That power, that speed, those movements. That is Grindelwald. I am completely certain, the man added confidently. Well, ladies and gentlemen, then we have a problem, a man said as he leaned forward on the table and clasped his hands in front of his face. They destroyed our New York branch, which was one of our biggest bases, and ripped it apart. We can't let this go, the man growled, and the other members nodded their heads in agreement except for the man who had served Grindelwald during the Wizarding World War, who frantically shook his head. And what are you planning to do? Send people after him to hunt him down? The first man asked sarcastically. Is there something wrong with that? One of the women asked condescendingly. Of course, there is something wrong with that. Grindelwald is no common wizard. Once I saw him butcher his way through 50 ICW hit wizards on his own without breaking a sweat. I was there when he was defeated by Dumbledore, the man explained with a growl. I witnessed the magic they wielded. I witnessed the devastation they had wrought upon their battlefield. The two of them were in a completely different league, the man finished with a whisper. Then what do you expect us to do? Accept our defeat? Do you have any idea what this will do to our reputation? The man who previously suggested taking revenge asked angrily. Wait. There is no need to fight between ourselves. Firstly, I believe we should re-evaluate everything we know about the whole situation before finally deciding anything. I am not saying that we shouldn't attack him or anything, but we should at least assess all of our options, one of the women suggested, earning nods from everyone, except for the man who had worked under Grindelwald, but he also ended up nodding his head even though he was quite reluctant about it. All right. One of the other men called out while nodding his head. Then let's begin with what we already know, the man added before clapping his hands as he looked around at his fellow colleagues. Grindelwald seems to be a part of some group called the Lost Garden. The group is relatively new as this had been their second appearance, one of the women thoughtfully pointed out. That we know of. They could have been operating for much longer, one of the men pointed out, and the others had to admit, his point was quite sound. They came looking for the identity of the person who had issued the contract for Harry Potter's assassination and they were denied. This attack was a clear retaliation for that, the man continued. So, there might be some sort of connection between Lost Garden and Harry Potter, right? We know that Harry Potter is protected. We lost a whole mercenary group consisting of 12 members and they weren't amateurs by any means, one of the men pointed out for the rest of the group. Or the Lost Garden was simply looking for an excuse to attack us, another valid point was presented. That too, the man who suggested attacking Grindelwald agreed. So, Grindelwald is the only one who can give us the answers we are looking for, the man added with a sigh as he leaned back. For the time, put all of our branches on alert and tighten the security. We cannot lose another branch to an attack like this. It is not only bad for reputation, but it is also very bad for business, the man ordered sharply. To be honest, even he didn't want to tangle with Gellert Grindelwald. He had never met the man personally, but he had heard a lot of stories. Gellert Grindelwald was the one most dangerous wizards to ever walk on Earth, and even if half of the rumors he had heard about the man were true, then their future was quite bleak. Headmaster's office, Hogwarts. Albus arrived in his office and started to contemplate his options. To be honest, he wasn't expecting the Grey faction to throw their support to the Dark faction in such a manner. After some deliberation, he was able to find what Cornelius and his advisors were planning. Instead of stopping the plot, Albus decided to use the plot to his advantage, and it failed spectacularly. He was hoping to get Amos Diggory to become Harry's new guardian, as Amos was an avid Light supporter and the man wouldn't have dismissed his suggestions. Using Sirius would have been the easiest, that is why Albus helped him out of Azkaban in the first place, but he turned out to be a complete disappointment in the first place. Sirius simply refused to listen to him, and since he refused to listen to him, Albus had to cut him off, no matter how heartless it sounded. It was for the greater good. Alas, everything didn't go according to his plans. Instead of Amos Diggory, thanks to the complete support of the Grey faction, Lucius Malfoy was declared Harry Potter's new guardian. Within the next few days, Harry was going to be in the clutches of Lucius Malfoy, and that was something Albus couldn't allow. Harry Potter was the only one who could beat Voldemort. The second prophecy painted a harrowing picture of the future of the wizarding world, but even then, Harry Potter was their only hope. Voldemort would destroy everything in his path if he wasn't stopped, and if the first prophecy was to be believed, only Harry could beat him. Albus was broken out of his musings when someone knocked on the door. There was only one person who would visit him at this time. Enter, Albus called out, and moments later, the door opened with a click before Severus entered his office with his usual indifferent look on his face. "Good evening, Headmaster. How was the meeting?" Severus asked as he took a seat. Albus released a defeated sigh. "Lucius Malfoy is Harry Potter's new guardian," Albus revealed tiredly, and Severus looked alarmed at the revelation. "How did he even win?" "You know, he will kill the boy, right?" Severus asked with a frown, only for Albus to nod his head in agreement. Just like he suspected, Severus was prejudiced against the boy for the actions of his father and godfather, but Albus had come to learn that a part of Severus genuinely cared about the boy. His love for Lily was able to scrub off some of the hatred he felt for the boy. Alas, that didn't mean that he was ever going to treat the boy nicely. The boy looked too much like his father for Severus to treat him any differently. Then there was the fact that he couldn't treat the boy nicely, as he was supposed to be a Death Eater and the boy was responsible for defeating their master. Albus genuinely felt bad for him, and to be honest, he was somewhat proud that Severus didn't choose the easy way out. "I know. Lucius, someone managed to get the complete support of the Grey faction," Albus answered with a sigh. "Then it probably wasn't cheap for Lucius," Severus muttered with a pondering look on his face. "Then what are you planning to do?" Severus asked after a few moments of silence. "I cannot allow Lucius to have the boy," Albus assured, making Severus frown at him. "Is he really our only option?" Severus asked. He didn't want to depend on a 14-year-old to defeat the Dark Lord. "Severus, I know you don't want to believe in the prophecy, but prophecies tend to work in mysterious ways," Albus pointed out with a chuckle. To be honest, he wanted to send Severus to grab the boy and bring him here before Amelia's Aurors could reach him, but Severus' absence would be easily noticed and he couldn't put Severus at risk in such a manner. He would have to look for someone fitting for the task, but he did have some time, thanks to Amelia. He knew that Amelia obviously had her own reasons for her actions, and he wondered if she had some plans for Harry. Amelia was becoming way too active for his liking. He couldn't believe that she had the audacity to send Nymphadora Tonks to spy on his school. Thanks to the map, he already knew that Nymphadora Tonks was masquerading as Susan Bones, but he decided not to take any action. He didn't want to reveal his hand, but it made him wonder how much the woman really knew to come after him in such a manner.